Chapter 442. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you for Senior Ho's good intentions. I will seriously consider this matter. His voice wasn't close at all, but faintly cold. Many cultivators relaxed. It seemed that Ho Yuengo's actions had been far too overbearing, causing Qin Yu to reject him and feel anger in his heart. It wasn't likely that he would join the demonic path. All right. I apologize to little friend for my inappropriate conduct in the past. Little friend, you must be careful when making decisions in the future. Ho Yuengo said with a slight smile, not the slightest bit embarrassed. Everyone in the banquet hall cursed him for being a wily old fox. The banquet continued. Various influences appeared one after another, sending out signals of recruitment to Qin Yu. Some of those with insufficient strength directly presented a list of gifts and stated that if fellow Daoist Qin Yu needed anything, he could directly ask them. Their attitudes couldn't be any better. Qin Yu inwardly shook his head. If he were to gather all 36 kinds of soul treasures here today, then perhaps he really might be able to gather them all. However, if he accepted such a valuable gift, he would be stained with karma. In the future, when others came to ask him for help, he would have to return the favor. Furthermore, he had no intention of choosing either side today. In order to avoid trouble, he could not accept any gifts. Amongst the immortal sect cultivators, a young female cultivator's eyes flashed and her lips moved. Jean Russian coughed. Little Rain, come with me. I want to speak with this little friend Qin Yu. As he said this, he started walking. The female immortal sect cultivator named Xue Xiaoyu respectfully followed behind. As soon as the immortal sect cultivators moved, they instantly attracted the attention of everyone from all directions. The volume of voices in the banquet hall suddenly dropped by several degrees. The crowd of cultivators that had been surrounding Qin Yu began to retreat to the side. This was the might of an immortal sect. Jean Russian smiled. Little friend Qin Yu, the previous questions were just customary. I hope you don't mind them. Behind him, Xue Xiaoyu lowered her head as if she was just following. Her 10 fingers formed a strange spell under her sleeves, and a sparkling light flashed in the depths of her lowered eyes. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and bowed back. Senior Jin's words are too serious. Qin Yu can understand and would never dare to hold any grudges against you. His movements were calm and his tone was calm. His performance was flawless. Within his soul space, a crescent purple moon sprinkled down light, covering his soul. It was hazy and blurry, making it impossible to see clearly. That's good. I wonder if little friend has any intentions of becoming a member of the immortal sect. Jean Russian's words were polite and he constantly smiled as he spoke. However, there didn't seem to be much sincerity in his words. Rather, it seemed more like, he had come here to speak with Qin Yu. Qin Yu maintained his composure in response, but he was already on full alert. Within his Dantian Sea, the phantom of the 5-element mountain appeared and the path of metal emitted a sharp killing intent. Jean Russian's previous question was definitely because the immortal sect already had some suspicions about his identity. Although he didn't know what methods they had to investigate his identity, there was nothing wrong with being a bit more cautious. Xue Xiaoyu released her 10 fingers from her sleeves and let out a sigh of relief. It wasn't him. The person in front of him had a strange soul aura. There was a vast and cold feeling to it, and the magic power in his dantian was incomparably sharp and tyrannical. He should be cultivating some sort of metal attribute cultivation method, but this didn't match with the information Qin Yu had. She really was overthinking things. How could that boy have the qualifications to be ranked on the ancient perishment decree? Jean Russian's eyes flashed. He smiled and said, Little friend Qin, please consider it. The immortal sect will await your reply. With that, he turned around and left. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. Did he pass the test? 2 hours later, Kong Mingqiao walked to the center of the banquet hall. He loudly said, "Everyone has expressed their sincerity to fellow Daoist Qin Yu. As for what choice he makes, that will be up to fellow Daoist Qin Yu to consider. It's getting late, so the banquet will end here." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Moreover, I have obtained fellow Daoist Qin Yu's authorization to inform everyone that all gifts placed in the Dao arena must be completely taken back. I ask that no one leave behind their gifts and leave, otherwise I will have no choice but to donate these things to a charity foundation to help the remote villages within the borders of the Zhao Empire." Qin Yu promptly said, "That's right. Seniors, please don't make things difficult for me." This choice surpassed everyone's expectations. It had to be known that in order to leave a good impression on Qin Yu, everyone who attended the banquet today had prepared a generous gift. With so many gifts added together, it could be called a massive amount of wealth. Qin Yu could accept all of them without being criticized by anyone. Luckily, he refused all of them. This caused everyone to feel a bit more at ease. At the very least, no one rushed ahead of him. Was it because Qin Yu was a noble person of unquestionable integrity and didn't want to accept gifts without merit? Or was it because he was wealthy to begin with and didn't need these gifts? Or was it because the grade of the gifts they prepared wasn't high enough to enter his eyes? As their thoughts raced, the guests in the banquet hall all stood up and bid their farewells. Before anyone left, they all said a few words to Qin Yu. For instance, at this moment, standing in front of Qin Yu was the domineering elder Qian Duo of the South End bloodline. "Little friend Qin Yu, my South End bloodline is in desperate need of talent. Little friend, you must consider my faction. I will remain in Four Seasons City until little friend makes a choice." Qian Duo's words were sincere and his eyes were firm. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "I thank Elder Qian for thinking so highly of me. I will definitely consider this carefully." The demonic path's Ho Yuango walked forwards. Although he was alone, his aura was overwhelming and disdainful, causing everyone to draw back. Qian Duo helplessly smiled and walked away. "Little friend Qin Yu, the demon ascension gate's opening will arrive soon. I hope that you can wait for some time. The demonic path is very sincere towards you." Ho Yuango said with a smile. Qin Yu said, "This junior will consider it." The group from the immortal sect walked forwards. The leader, Jin Rushin, frowned, an undisguised chill in his eyes. Ho Yuango faintly smiled, not caring at all. He stepped towards the exit. The immortal sect and demonic path couldn't do anything to each other, so they could only choose to settle things peacefully. But both sides didn't like each other to the bone, so it was naturally impossible for them to get along. Through the endless years, all sorts of struggles had never ceased. The higher the level of the cultivators on both sides, the more they understood that it was impossible to reconcile with each other, and the greater the hostility between them. Jin Rushin said, "Little friend Qin Yu, I hope that you will make the right choice and not be tempted by evil spirits." Ho Yuango paused. He turned and said, "Jin Rushin, those words aren't pleasant to hear. Do you want to fight me?" Jin Rushin sneered. "Ho Yuango, you are indeed strong, but today you are only an avatar in Four Seasons City. Do you think I fear you? So what if it's an avatar? It's more than enough to deal with you." Ho Yuango's smile became even brighter, his eyes cold and without warmth. Shua, countless eyes looked over. They clearly never thought that the representatives of the immortal sect and demonic path would have a direct conflict at the end of the banquet. Up until now, both sides had been restraining themselves and hadn't tried to provoke a fight. Was it all because of Qin Yu today? Or was there some other secret behind this? Xue Xiaoyu frowned. She didn't care about the battle between Jean Russian and Ho Yuengo. The two of them had a grudge long ago and were old enemies. Her eyes fell on Qin Yu. A black robe covered his entire body, and this figure was strange. But, for some unknown reason, she felt a bit of familiarity from this unfamiliarity. And this familiarity caused her to feel disgust from the depths of her heart. After a brief hesitation, Xue Xiaoyu suddenly said, "Hi Master Jean, we need to return to the immortal sect as soon as possible to participate in Senior Apprentice Sister Ningling's burial ceremony. We cannot delay any longer." As she spoke, she locked onto Qin Yu from the corner of her eyes. Jean Russian maintained his composure. He coldly snorted, no longer speaking. What a pity. My Nine-Heaven Mirror Moon Palace originally could have had a proud son of heaven disciple whose talent might not have been any weaker than fellow Daoist Qin Yu's. But what a pity, she couldn't pass the tribulation of love and ended up dying, her Dao fading away. Xue Xiaoyu's voice was gentle, filled with helplessness and regret. If I was rude before, I apologize to fellow Daoist Qin Yu on behalf of High Master Jean. Qin Yu's body stiffened like iron. Loud rumbling sounds rang out in his mind and all thoughts were tossed to the highest heavens. His face paled. After a long period of silence, he slowly said, "Fellow Daoist, are you speaking of that fairy Ningling from Nine-Heaven Mirror Moon Palace?" Xue Xiaoyu nodded. "That's right. Does fellow Daoist know Senior Apprentice Sister Ningling?" Qin Yu let out a light breath. "I've only heard of her. But, I heard that Fairy Ningling was the disciple of Great Elder Purple Moon. She had an incomparably noble status and was highly regarded by the immortal sect, so how could she have suddenly perished?" Xue Xiaoyu sighed. "I have no idea as to the specific reason. I only heard rumors that Senior Apprentice Sister Ningling's death was related to a man." Qin Yu was in a trance. A wisp of divine sense broke into his body without warning. He was instantly awakened. The purple moon in his soul space cried out, expelling this divine sense from his body. But, it was clear that this brief delay had allowed it to send some information. Xue Xiaoyu's eyes suddenly turned icy cold. A thick killing intent covered Qin Yu. A figure blocked in front of Qin Yu. Kong Mingqiao had a faint expression. "Everyone, this is the Dao arena. It's best if you don't make things difficult for me." Xue Xiaoyu looked deeply at him and then turned to leave. Jean Russian and the others quickly followed. This sudden change left everyone shocked. This common-looking young female cultivator from the immortal sect was actually a terrifying powerhouse that had been hiding. They could clearly feel that killing intent just now. If they asked themselves honestly, there was no way they could have resisted it. Ho Yuengo frowned, a gloomy light in his eyes. He immediately restrained himself and left. The banquet came to an end. But the final result wasn't beautiful at all. In particular, the killing intent of that mysterious female cultivator from the immortal sect cast a shadow over everyone's hearts. Those ranked on the ancient perishment decree represented infinite possibilities in the future. As long as they didn't perish along the way, they would have great achievements in the future. But if he was targeted by the immortal sect, or if there was enmity between the two sides, would the immortal sect just stand idly by and watch as Qin Yu smoothly grew? For a time, countless news wildly spread out. Everyone's desire to recruit Qin Yu was greatly reduced. Qin Yu's mind was in chaos. He returned to his training room and took several deep breaths before he could barely restore his ability to think. The moment Xue Xiaoyu's killing intent erupted, Qin Yu knew that there was a trace of Purple Moon's divine sense hidden within her body. In other words, from start to finish, Purple Moon had been probing him. If something really had happened to Ningling, there was no need for Purple Moon to be so nervous. Right. The more nervous Purple Moon was, the more she wanted to target him, the more it showed that she cared, and the source of her concern was only Ning Ling. This must be it, this must be it. Nothing would have happened to Ning Ling, she absolutely wouldn't have. This was only a scheme Purple Moon used to probe him. Qin Yu tried to convince himself that this was the truth. But, he was well aware of Ning Ling's character and how deep her feelings for him were. She might have fallen into despair because of him faking his death, and even had thoughts of destroying herself. Chapter 443. The invisible pillars of energy above the Tao arena dissipated. Thick clouds covered the skies once more, blocking out all light. Wind and snow swirled in the darkness, howling and howling. There was only a giant plaque above the Tao arena that emitted a 7-colored light. It was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers, sprinkling down a halo of light. Kong Mingqiao stepped out from behind a snowy pine tree. His footprints sank into the snow, emitting a faint sound that spread out in the darkness, as if it were some sort of reminder. He sighed and said, I have no idea what sort of grudge exists between the immortal sect and fellow Daoist Qin Yu, but since he is in the Tao arena, I will not allow him to be harmed. Great Elder Purple Moon, please do not make things difficult for me. A figure appeared in the darkness. Beneath the dim light, her face was beautiful. This was the female immortal sect cultivator named Xue Xiaoyu. But now, her expression was cold and her eyes were filled with dignity. Hidden beneath this mortal body was a trace of Purple Moon's divine sense. As a Calamity Immortal Realm's Supreme Elder, even if her divine sense descended through her mortal body, it was still terrifying enough. Moreover, as the Great Elder of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace, she was one of the 3 giants of the immortal sect when the position of Palace Master was temporarily vacant. Her true cultivation was unfathomably deep. Kong Mingqiao, I will kill Qin Yu no matter what. Are you sure you want to stop me? Her voice was ice cold, penetrating deep into the heart. Xue Xiaoyu took a step forwards and all the snow within 1,000 feet sunk down several feet. Kong Mingqiao lifted a hand. A dreadful potential rose up from the Tao arena, hidden like magma beneath the earth. Once it erupted, it could burn all things to ashes. Xue Xiaoyu's eyes flashed with killing intent. Kong Mingqiao, you know who I am and yet you dare to be so rude to me. Are you trying to provoke a war with my immortal sect? Kong Mingqiao lightly said, Great Elder has an honorable status. Unless I have no other choice, I would not dare to offend you. But, Qin Yu is ranked on the ancient perishment decree and is an honored guest of my Tao arena. No one can touch him here. He looked up, his eyes sharp. If Great Elder insists on killing someone, then you must step over my corpse and then raise my 4-season City Tao Arena branch division to the ground. You think I don't dare? Xue Xiaoyu was enraged. Kong Mingqiao said, Great Elder naturally dares. But in the future, you and the immortal sect will also have to withstand the anger of the Tao arena. Great Elder should know that although my master has a good temper, he is a person who is protective of his own people. Moreover, he has never suffered a loss. His voice was calm and naturally revealed a strong confidence. That's right, Kong Mingqiao was threatening Purple Moon. She could destroy this place and kill everyone here, but she and the immortal sect would have to pay the price for this. The Tao arena had been established in the land of divinity and demons for many years. Although they didn't recruit disciples or cultivate influences, there was a reason why the 300-plus Tao arenas had remained silent for countless years. Xue Xiaoyu became silent. Her dignified eyes were calm. A person in a superior position was like a calm lake, but this did not mean that she was not angry. On the contrary, it was an expression of extreme anger. The air was almost frozen, and an invisible pressure descended like a mountain. The accumulated snow within 1,000 feet sank bit by bit, becoming as thin as paper and covering the ground, turning into some kind of crystal. All right. I will give the Tao Arena some face, but this junior Qin Yu must die. Shua Xiaoyu turned and vanished into the darkness. Kong Mingqiao let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. His complexion quickly paled. Not everyone had the confidence to directly face a tribulation immortal almighty being, much less great elder Purple Moon who had the status of one of the three big shots of the immortal sect. Even if he had the Tao Arena behind him and could borrow the strength of the Tao Arena to fight, Kong Mingqiao still didn't have the slightest confidence. Luckily, his master's reputation was great enough to temporarily force Purple Moon to retreat. But, if he was targeted by such a terrifying existence, his future days would become difficult. Kong Mingqiao shook his head and returned to the darkness, his aura restrained. Besides the thick clouds in the sky and the thick and crooked old pine tree on the ground, no one knew that a terrifying battle had almost erupted here. It was even possible that it would change the entire situation of the land of divinity and demons. All of this could only be witnessed by the thin paper-like snowflakes on the ground. Suddenly, a hatchet stretched out from within space, easily cutting open a channel. Woodchopper Fu stepped out, his eyes sweeping around, a look of praise in them. As expected, a newborn calf doesn't fear a tiger. This little girl from the immortal sect actually dares to provoke a tiger like the Tao Arena. She really has guts. However, this boy is the mortal body that I chose, so I cannot allow him to be killed by you like this. Perhaps I should think of a way to drive you out of Four Seasons City. Woodchopper Fu thought out loud. After a moment of thought, he turned and walked away. His steps were slow, but after several steps he had vanished into the wind and snow. The immortal sect had businesses in Four Seasons City. Or, it was more accurate to say that in any city in the land of divinity and demons, there was an immortal sect influence. This wasn't too large, but it was beautifully constructed. The array formations within had been improved so that they could perfectly simulate the weather and the changing colors of the sky. Thus, at this time, clouds covered the outside of the courtyard and the sky was pitch black. Wind and snow fluttered about, but the interior of the courtyard was as bright as day. Beneath the warm light, one could see swaying grass and blooming red flowers. Xue Xiaoyu stood in the courtyard, her hands behind her back. She frowned, lost in thought. There was a pressure spreading out from her body, like a sun that one couldn't look directly at. Although the Tao Arena had always valued those ranked on the ancient perishment decree, they hadn't taken any drastic actions because of this. Today, in order to protect Qin Yu, Kong Mingqiao didn't hesitate to use his life and even the entire Four Seasons City Tao Arena branch division. Was it really just because Qin Yu was in the Tao Arena? Or, were there some hidden secrets that even she didn't know about? Her heart tightened and the chill in her eyes became even thicker. She couldn't allow any hidden dangers to exist in the relationship between the immortal sect and Ningling, otherwise, she wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble to kill Qin Yu. Just as she said when she left the Tao Arena, Qin Yu had to die. Suddenly, Xue Xiaoyu's eyes erupted with a bright light, like a bolt of lightning cutting through the darkness. How dare you! With a loud shout, she turned and thrust out her palm. Her pale and delicate palm emitted a faint halo of light, as if it were made of jade. Space split open and a black dagger appeared. It was as cunning as a poisonous tongue as it shot towards her palm. Xue Xiaoyu frowned. The surface of her palm emitted a rich halo of light. Paw, the sound wasn't loud. The black dagger stabbed into her palm and then vanished into thin air, as if it had never appeared. Xue Xiaoyu's frown deepened. She looked down and saw a faint bloodstain on her palm. Her expression became even heavier. After several breaths of silence, with her as the center, everything within a 100-foot radius turned into powder without warning. This powder included the earth and the space above it. Everything within a 100-foot radius had turned into a death zone. Whoosh, whoosh, the immortal sect cultivators howled forwards. It was only now that they realized that two terrifying existences were fighting. Their eyes widened in shock and anger. Who was so bold as to attack Great Elder Purple Moon's divine sense body? Didn't they fear the endless retaliation of the immortal sect? Don't come over, Xue Xiaoyu suddenly said. Her voice was young and tender, but at this time it was as cold as the winter winds. A cold killing intent pierced deep into one's bones. She stepped forwards, but her speed wasn't fast. On her fifth step, a long and thin wound appeared on her cheek. The wound wasn't deep, and it stopped after a small drop of blood seeped out. On the ninth step, a second wound appeared on the back of her hand. On the 13th step, a third wound appeared. On the 22nd step, a fourth wound appeared. On the 37th step, a fifth wound appeared. On the 44th step, Xue Xiaoyu walked out of the 100-foot death zone. Her body trembled and she coughed. Blood gushed out from the corners of her lips. A sixth wound appeared between her eyebrows. Great Elder! Jean Russian cried out in alarm. Xue Xiaoyu didn't respond. The wounds on her body were regenerating at an astonishing speed. At the very least, they had healed on the surface. She looked up at the place where the black dagger had vanished, a dignified and fearful look in her eyes. The other party had retreated after failing to strike and she didn't know who he was. This was extremely terrifying. Although her true strength was a bit lacking compared to the highest peak existences in the world, to be able to injure her without leaving behind any aura meant that the other party's strength had reached the highest level. However, the one who attacked should have only been an avatar. Otherwise, her mortal body that had descended with her divine sense would have long since been turned to dust. It would have been impossible for her to resist. But just who was it that dared to risk universal condemnation and attack her? In this world, those with such a cultivation were like great suns in the skies. Each one stood at the peak of the world, a true transcendent existence that stood above the highest heavens. They wouldn't easily attack. So, if they did, they had to have a reason. The one who attacked her had at most destroyed a part of her divine sense. This wasn't a serious injury and could be recovered after some time. Thus, the one who attacked shouldn't be a mortal enemy of the immortal sect. Then, the other party's goal was, a bolt of lightning flashed in Xue Xiaoyu's mind. She had just returned from the Dao arena and yet a transcendent existence had immediately attacked her. Was this a coincidence, or was there some connection between the two? A calamity immortal realm's supreme being had already touched upon the heavenly Dao and was only a step away from the great Dao realm. Their aura blended with the world and they could sense each other, forming an extremely strong divine sense. The so-called divine sense was a mysterious and indescribable ability. It could predict the enemy's advance, foresee dangers, and even faintly see fragments of the future. Purple Moon's heart chilled. This was because her divine sense told her that it was the latter. The one who attacked her today wanted to destroy her divine sense. At the very least, they wanted to severely wound her so that she would have no choice but to leave for Season City. If she didn't leave, then the second attack would scatter her divine sense. The other party wanted to force her to leave for Season City. This was clearly to protect Qin Yu. But this brat from the wilderness that came from the land of exiles, even if he had some unknown stroke of luck and managed to climb onto the ancient perishment decree, how could he possibly cause the highest powerhouses of the world to risk the anger of the immortal sect to attack him? It was clear that the one who attacked did this out of some need. Ning Ling. The one who witnessed this could only be Ning Ling. He must have sensed the cause and effect of this matter. He was certain that as long as Qin Yu was alive, there would be an irreparable crack buried between Ning Ling and the immortal sect. Once it erupted, it would be enough to completely separate her from the immortal sect and cause even more terrifying consequences. That's right, it was like this. Purple Moon's killing intent soared. Before, she was only 80% optimistic about Ningling. But now, Shen Yuanyin, who cultivated the sublime lost emotion code, was 120%. She was destined to become the ruler of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace. She would wield unsurpassed strength and become one of the three giants of the immortal sect, an existence that could look down on the world with disdain. Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace had been waiting for Ningling for countless years. They couldn't allow any accidents to occur, not even the slightest bit. Xue Xiaoyu suddenly lifted a hand. Using her slender and white fingertip as a pen, she drew in the air. Soon, a circular image appeared. There were several spots of light scattered about, flickering like stars in the night sky. In the next moment, in the skies above Four Seasons City, the layers of clouds were torn apart once more, revealing a radiant night sky. In this night sky, there were over a dozen stars that shined brightly. Jean Russian revealed a shocked expression. But, he was well aware of his own status. Since Great Elder Purple Moon had already made a decision, he couldn't interfere. But, there was one point that Jean Russian was well aware of. Something great was about to occur in Four Seasons City. In the distant immortal sect. Great Elder Purple Moon stood up. Pass down my orders. From this day forth, Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace will be sealed. Before I return, no one is allowed to enter or leave. As she finished speaking, she lifted a hand and pointed at the skies. In the vast sea of stars, countless stars suddenly lit up. Countless beams of starlight gathered into a column that fell down, covering her. The starlight column trembled. Purple Moon's figure had already vanished. In the next moment, in the skies above Four Seasons City, those shining stars gathered into a beam of light that fell into the circular image that Xue Xiaoyu had drawn. Dressed in purple robes, Great Elder Purple Moon had a dignified demeanor, her aura overwhelming the world. She stepped out from this beam of starlight. Tonight, the entire Four Seasons City was shaken. Countless cultivators had shocked expressions. As they looked up into the skies, at the beam of starlight that fell down, their eyes nearly glazed over. This is Great Star Transmission. To control the rules of the world and borrow the power of the stars, one could ignore the barriers of space and instantly move through the endless space. This was a method that approached the realm of gods, and it could only be used by those at the peak of the world. It was a supernatural ability that belonged to Calamity Immortal Realm Almighty Elders. A Calamity Immortal Realm existence had arrived in Four Seasons City. This information was like an ancient divine mountain falling into the sea. Instantly, it was like raging waves that roared out in all directions. When the immortal sect group entered the city, they didn't hide their tracks. Soon, the news was sent back. The beam of starlight fell upon the courtyard where the immortal sect cultivators were staying. In other words, the almighty elder that arrived now came from the immortal sect. In that instant, countless well-informed individuals recalled the scene that occurred not too long ago in the Dao Arena's banquet hall. Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace's Great Elder Purple Moon's divine sense had arrived, and for some unknown reason, she wanted to kill the 9th-ranked Qin Yu on the ancient perishment decree. Could it be that the immortal sect almighty elder that arrived at Four Seasons City tonight was that Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace's Great Elder Purple Moon, a transcendent existence that actually possessed the status of one of the immortal sect's three giants? Countless cultivators were increasingly shocked. They couldn't help but wonder just why the honored Great Elder Purple Moon would want to kill Qin Yu no matter what. In the dark of night, Ho Yuango had a dignified expression as he looked at that exquisite courtyard in the distance. He discovered that things seemed to be spiraling out of his control. Any almighty being that dominated their own domain wouldn't easily step into another domain. This was likely to be interpreted as some sort of provocation. Moreover, Purple Moon was a transcendent existence that could represent the immortal sect. For her to personally arrive meant that there was more to this matter than he knew. Suddenly, Ho Yuengo's pupils shrank. Without hesitation, he rapidly drew backwards. His reaction was fast and decisive to the extreme. But in the eyes of the person who attacked, he was far, far too slow. As Ho Yuengo retreated, his body suddenly stiffened. In the next moment, he exploded in the air. There was no blood or broken bones, he was like a human-shaped bubble. A black light flew out, extending into Ho Yuengo's figure. Purple Moon, you've gone insane. From the courtyard, a beautiful woman in purple robes walked out. She looked to be around 30 years old and her beauty was unrivaled. But at this time, no one paid any attention to her beauty. Or, rather, no one dared to look at her face for even a moment. A boundless aura, as deep as a sea abyss, radiated through the entirety of Four Seasons City. Beneath her aura, this massive city that was home to tens of millions of lives began to tremble. In the skies, the thick cumulus clouds were like frost beneath the blazing sun, rapidly melting away at an astonishing speed. Bright moonlight accompanied by a faint starlight covered her in a layer of haze. She seemed even more aloof and remote, like an empress of the divine realm that had descended to the world, majestic and dignified. Ho Yuengo, you have been disrespectful to me. For me to not kill your soul fragment here is already a kindness beyond the law. A calm voice, stimulated by a terrifying cultivator, resounded through all of Four Seasons City. Massive waves of sound tumbled in the air, causing the thick city walls to tremble. Ho Yuengo clenched his teeth. Good. Good. I will remember this matter. Great Elder Purple Moon, we will settle this in the future. Whoosh, his body shrank into a black dot of light that hauled away. Purple Moon's eyes flashed with an icy cold light. Those who threaten me, die. She lifted a hand and pointed outwards. There was a miserable scream as Ho Yuengo's soul fragment that had flown out of Four Seasons City was blown to pieces in the air. At this moment, countless cultivators revealed looks of fear. Although Ho Yuengo wasn't an almighty being, because of his avatar technique, his strength could be called the strongest beneath almighty beings. There were even rumors that he had once contended with a first-level calamity immortal. This sort of character was highly regarded even in the demonic path. Purple Moon killing Ho Yuengo's soul fragment could be considered the greatest conflict between the immortal path and demonic path in the last 1,000 years. If this matter wasn't handled properly, it might even trigger another war between the immortal path and demonic path. At that time, there would be another war that would sweep through the entire land of divinity and demons. No one would be able to escape, and everyone would be drawn into a quagmire to struggle for their lives. After exterminating Ho Yuengo's soul fragment with a single finger, Purple Moon turned towards the Dao arena. After a moment of silence, she stepped forwards. Strong winds rose between the heavens and earth. Bolts of purple thunder descended from the void, illuminating the countless panic-stricken faces on the ground. At this time, the stars and moon hung high in the skies. Without the slightest cloud cover, purple thunder wove together into a net beneath the curtain of night. Chapter 444. Beneath the curtain of night, the moon and stars intersected and purple thunder roared. Woodchopper Fu was extremely far away from the Dao arena. But with his cultivation, distance was meaningless. He could clearly sense everything and his eyes were full of praise. Good. Good. You are truly worthy of being the immortal sex baby girl, your courage is admirable. This time, there really is a great show to watch. What a pity that I have to hide to see this show, living is tiring. Suddenly, Woodchopper Fu frowned, a strange look in his eyes. If you think living is tiring, then why do you still live? I've heard you say these words for so many years. Even if you don't find them annoying, I find them annoying. There was a gentle smile in his voice, as if he were joking with an old friend, casual and natural. Woodchopper Fu turned around, a helpless expression on his face. Why did you come looking for me? Today I only came to watch the show. This matter has nothing to do with me. Ha, I can't even lie down and get shot at. Living is tiring. Unfortunately, his innocent face didn't move him at all. As the smiling middle-aged man in front of him looked at him, he gave off an indescribable feeling. He was clearly a man and his Adam's apple was obvious, but his pretty face could make 99% of women in the world feel ashamed of their inferiority. If Qin Yu were here, he would also marvel at his beauty. Ning Ling, Ning Liang, and even Yu Qi could be considered the world's top beauties. But compared to him, they were actually a bit worse. To use beauty to describe a man was not to ridicule or despise him. Rather, this was the most appropriate word to describe him. The middle-aged man in white clothes was as beautiful as a monstrous monster. His eyes were warm like warm jade and his posture was calm. Just by faintly smiling, he exuded an air of elegance. Don't complain. We are all acquaintances here, so there is no need to put on such a show. The middle-aged man arched an eyebrow and his smile widened. Let's make a deal. How about you help me and ask this immortal sect person to leave? Woodchopper Fu shook his head. No way. This little girl isn't too old, but her strength is quite good. Moreover, with her status, she definitely has life-saving methods. Anyone who faces her will have a headache. Pausing for a moment, he gloated and said, what's more, they're here for your business today. It has nothing to do with me, so why should I make a move? Dao Arena, your business. This outrageously beautiful middle-aged man was actually one of the most mysterious powerhouses in the land of divinity and demons, the master of the Dao Arena. In the legends, he was a man who had once fought with the heavens and managed to escape unscathed. Their fierce and courageous deeds spread throughout the land of divinity and demons for many years, inspiring countless cultivators to diligently cultivate. They hoped that one day they would be able to follow in the footsteps of their predecessors and reach a boundary where they could contend with the heavens. If they were to find out that the unparalleled ferocious man in their imagination, who could run a horse on his shoulders and pull a bridge under his crotch, was actually this pretty boy in front of them, their idol image would probably fall apart in an instant. The Dao Arena Master's smile didn't diminish in the slightest. Old man, you should know that I am someone who cannot suffer a loss. I cannot watch on helplessly as Purple Moon destroys my Dao Arena. However, if I were to make a move, you'd better consider it carefully. At that time, you might be dragged into it as well. Based on what? Woodchopper Fu was enraged. Are you trying to be reasonable? Are there no laws? I'm just an old man on the verge of death. Can't I just hide on the side and watch from the sidelines? You even want to implicate me. Solitary Westgate, your name is strange, but has your personality become so twisted? The Dao Arena Master called Solitary Westgate smiled and nodded. First of all, I think my name is quite good. Second of all, Purple Moon is about to arrive and there isn't much time left for you to consider. So, do you want me to take action and bring you along, or do you want to take the initiative and ask her to leave for me? Hurry up and choose. I refuse to accept this. It's useless to refuse. Solitary Westgate refuted. He lifted a hand, a helpless expression on his face. It looks like you've already made your choice. It's been a long time since I've been active and I've gained some insights in these past years, so I've improved several small methods. Old man, I'll allow you to comment on them. Woodchopper Fu shouted out, hold on. He clenched his teeth. Brat Westgate, consider yourself ruthless. He raised his hatchet and slashed behind him without looking back. In the distant skies, a great elder purple moon was approaching the Tao arena with the momentum of wind and thunder. Suddenly, her complexion changed. Woodchopper Fu. She lifted a hand and pressed down. Space instantly shattered and a pitch-black saber light flew out from the shattered space. Bang! A terrifying collision instantly arrived. Even in the land of divinity and demons where masters were like clouds, the vast majority of cultivators had never witnessed a battle between Calamity Immortal Realm's supreme elders. Today, the cultivators of Four Seasons City were fortunate enough to see this scene. But most of them would rather die than experience something like this. They saw that a massive chunk of space in the skies seemed to be dug out. In the pitch-black darkness, one could see with the naked eye that the tumbling destructive strength was like a tsunami in a black sea. If a terrifying might erupted, it would be enough to instantly destroy most of Four Seasons City and send millions of lives to hell. Everyone's hearts seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand. Horror gushed out from the depths of their hearts, causing them to stiffen as if they had fallen into an icy lake. Right now, Qin Yu was also one of them. As he looked at the terrifying collision occurring in the skies not too far away, his pupils shrank and his soul instinctively screamed out. Purple Moon was directly approaching the Tao arena. Thus, this battle was the same as erupting at the edge of the Tao arena. If the destructive strength of the battle spread out, the Tao arena and everyone within would be instantly crushed to powder, their bodies and souls destroyed. Although Qin Yu knew that once his identity was exposed, Purple Moon wouldn't hesitate to pay any price to kill him, he never thought she would be so overbearing as to directly arrive at Four Seasons City with her true body. What Qin Yu didn't know was that Woodchopper Fu had played a great role in this matter. His actions had caused Purple Moon to feel an intense sense of unease, leading to the current situation. He naturally didn't know that Woodchopper Fu, who had inadvertently caused all of this, had been captured by the Tao Arena Master to calm down this storm. Two world phantoms arrived. The edges ruthlessly collided, covering the shattered space and isolating the terrifying strength within. Purple Moon stopped, her eyes as cold as swords. Woodchopper Fu raised his black wood-chopping knife, a helpless expression on his face. Little girl Purple Moon, if I said that this wasn't my original intention, would you believe me? Purple Moon lifted a hand and a long sword appeared in her palm. The one who tried to destroy my divine sense was you. Her voice was calm, but anyone could feel the icy cold killing intent within. This wasn't a question. Woodchopper Fu bitterly smiled. He had really been discovered. But he hadn't done so to begin with, so he had been hoping for a fluke. Although Purple Moon was still a distance away from the boundary of a supreme powerhouse, she had already touched upon the edge. After exchanging moves twice with her true body, she would naturally be able to sense it. That's right. But I didn't want to destroy your divine sense. I just wanted you to leave Four Seasons City. Otherwise, with my true body here, there would be no way for you to escape. Woodchopper Fu was quite straightforward. Since he had been seen through, he might as well admit it. A cold light rose in Purple Moon's eyes. I wonder if you can give me a reason. Woodchopper Fu cursed inwardly. The reason was that Purple Moon wanted to kill Qin Yu, but he had taken a liking to his mortal body. But today, solitary Westgate's arrival at Four Seasons City had caused him to smell something strange. Thus, he couldn't speak of this matter. He was clearly in the right, and to a certain degree, it could even be said that he stood on the same side as Purple Moon. But he couldn't clearly explain himself and could only silently shoulder his own responsibility. This grievance, living was tiring. Seeing Woodchopper Fu remain silent, Purple Moon's expression actually calmed down. She placed her sword horizontally in front of her and slightly bowed. Then, Purple Moon would like to experience Senior's heaven-splitting saber art. With the cry of a sword, in the next moment, a purple moon appeared in the world phantom behind Purple Moon. What was astonishing was that countless arcs of deep purple thunder wove together on the surface of this purple moon. Even though there was a world phantom that isolated the aura inside and outside, all the cultivators that saw this purple moon could still feel the endless annihilation it contained. Yu didn't understand why this mysterious old man would appear to stop Purple Moon. But this seemed to indicate that he might not die today. His heart calmed a little. As he looked at the purple moon phantom and the purple thunder moon that appeared, his eyes flashed. Within Yu's soul space, there was also a purple moon phantom. But the shape of the moon wasn't complete, it was only a crescent moon. Although there were enormous differences between the two moon phantoms, Yu's intuition told him that there might be some connection between them. But at this time, he didn't have the mind to think about these things. He suppressed his thoughts and focused on the battlefield. A battle between Calamity Immortal Realm's supreme elders could be called a stroke of good fortune for any cultivator. If one could obtain some harvests from it, it would be worth several years or even dozens of years of bitter cultivation. Rumble rumble, within the purple moon phantom, countless arcs of deep purple thunder erupted. They surged outwards, constantly colliding in the air and fusing together. After several breaths of time, they turned into a thunder dragon. This thunder dragon had purple eyes and purple scales. As it roared, it was like a dragon of destruction had descended to the world. Purple Moon let go of her sword. The sword howled out, sinking into the thunder dragon's forehead and becoming a single horn in its eyes. As the thunder dragon grew a horn, its body nearly swelled up in several breaths of time. Its aura rose at an astonishing speed. It reared its head back and roared. Its giant tail swept out and its massive body tore open the edge of the world barrier. Like a predator at the top of the food chain, it broke into Woodchopper Fu's world phantom. This was a lonely world. Mountains and plains were covered with countless bamboo. It was impossible to see where they ended, as if it were a sea of green bamboo. But if one looked a bit more carefully, they would discover that every bamboo in this sea of bamboo had clear chisel marks on their surface, as if they were riddled with scars. But not a single one of these bamboos fell down. They still pointed straight into the heavens, like unbending spines. Dragon Cloud. Where the thunder dragon landed, endless thunderclouds appeared. Thick purple lightning illuminated every inch of this silent world. The thunder dragon slowly landed above the sea of bamboo. Its massive body coiled up as it stared at the sea of bamboo, a cruel and ruthless light thickening in its eyes. Suddenly, the thunder dragon opened its mouth and spat out dragon flames. This was an incomparably terrifying condensed power of thunder, as well as a combination of countless sword intents. Yu's eyes brightened. At this time, in his eyes, the dragon flames spat out by the thunder dragon were like a peerless swordsman slashing out with his sword. He could even hear the cry of a sword resounding through the highest heavens. In perceiving the five-element mountain, the first thing Yu chose was the path of metal. Metal was the white of the west, and it was the master of slaughter. The victory of this sword strike was the first he had ever seen in his life. His metal cultivation had fallen into a bottleneck, and at this moment, he began to tremble. This pleasant surprise had come too suddenly. Yu never imagined that his lucky chance to make a breakthrough in the metal path would come so quickly. His entire mind was immersed within, as if the only thing left in the entire world was that world-dazzling sword strike. The dragon flames fell from the skies like a meteor, dragging a long tail behind it. It stirred up endless fluctuations that rumbled out in all directions. The wind suddenly surged, and the quiet sea of bamboo violently tumbled. Countless bamboo branches collided with each other, emitting crackling sounds. This sound was like a layer of ice cracking, crisp and clear, as if something was starting to flow at this time. The thunder dragon's tyrannical eyes revealed a dignified expression. Without warning, in the endless sea of bamboo on the ground, from the cutting marks of the bamboo, a trace of saber intent gushed out. The saber intent was extremely weak, like a drizzle falling from the skies. But the rain was far too dense and the amount was impossible to count. Once it surpassed a certain limit, this quantitative change would produce a terrifying qualitative change. Thus, when they gathered together, it was like the following process: rainwater became a stream, the stream became a river, the river became a great river, the river became a vast ocean. Trillions of weak saber intents perfectly fused together. The momentum was vast and mighty, as if a great sun had arrived. It came in an upright and dignified manner, its brilliance able to divide the heavens and earth. Heaven-splitting saber art. A saber could split open the heavens, incomparably tyrannical. Qin Yu's heart shook. The bottleneck of the metal path trembled even more fiercely. Some of his doubts and doubts that were shrouded in shadows began to rapidly vanish as he comprehended them. The Thunder Dragon sword strike was the turning point for a breakthrough in the metal path. Then, the saber strike in the sea of bamboo would provide a formidable boost to his breakthrough. Perhaps in dangerous and hopeless situations, there were many great good chances. Although Qin Yu was at the heart of this storm, he had still managed to break through his shackles. He already had a premonition that large success in the metal path would come today. Whoosh! A dazzling saber light shot out from the sea of bamboo. The dragon flames were instantly split in half. Then, they trembled and collapsed, dissipating into nothingness. In an instant, the dragon flames shattered. The saber light didn't stop. It cut straight down at the Thunder Dragon, its momentum indomitable. It seemed as if even the heavens and earth would be cut apart and pierced through by this saber strike. The Thunder Dragon's eyes blazed with cruelty. It reared its head back and roared into the heavens. The horn between its eyebrows erupted with 1,000,000,000,000 layers of purple light. The halo of light overlapped, forming countless layers. Each layer was condensed from trillions of sword intents. But there was only a single saber light. It came from the earth and shot towards the heavens. Facing the layers of purple light and trillions of sword intents, the Thunder Dragon didn't hesitate at all. It cut down. Puff! Like a tearing bubble, the purple halo of light couldn't stop the saber light at all. It was instantly cut to pieces. Although the sword intent was endless, it couldn't stop the saber light at all. As it cut down, its color became increasingly dim. But, its aura didn't weaken at all. Instead, as time passed, it became increasingly strong, increasingly terrifying. It was like a saber had drunk its fill of blood, arousing its desire to kill. At this moment, Qin Yu suddenly closed his eyes. But, the scene of the saber light tearing through the halo of light with unstoppable force kept replaying in his mind. Within his mind, the countless lines of rules began to wildly decompose and reform. They became increasingly simple and their aura became increasingly swift and fierce. 10,000, 1,000, 100, 10, it seemed he had reached his limit. No, this wasn't enough. It could continue decreasing. 9. 8. 7. It was starting to become difficult. At some unknown time, Qin Yu had already sat down cross-legged. Wind rose up around him. Although it seemed gentle, it could easily crush apart a mountain. At some unknown time, the Dao Arena Master with the strange name of Solitary Westgate had appeared behind Qin Yu. He stared at his back, praise in his eyes. With his boundary, he could easily see through Qin Yu's current transformation. It was like a rough stone was being shed, gradually emitting light. He flicked his sleeves and the rules of the world instantly changed, covering up Qin Yu's aura so that it couldn't be sensed by the outside world. After what seemed like several breaths of time and also like several years, within Qin Yu's Dantian Sea, the five-element mountain phantom began to tremble. Now, there was only a single line of rules left over in his mind. This line of rules was extremely simple, like the tip of a pen dipped in ink. But, if one looked carefully, they would discover that it emitted an aura called the Great Tao's simplest form. The Tao of metal pressed forward, using its endless sharpness to break through trillions of obstacles. This was enough. It only had a single line. Enlightenment swelled in his mind. At this time, Qin Yu's 5-element mountain's Tao of metal had reached large success. Chapter 445. His consciousness trembled and he withdrew from the aftershocks of his breakthrough. Qin Yu was pleasantly surprised. He looked up and discovered that the two world phantoms that had collided had already vanished. Purple Moon and the hatchet-wielding old man had vanished from the skies above Four Seasons City. If it weren't for the terrifying aura still lingering between the heavens and earth, one might have thought that the heaven-shaking battle just now hadn't occurred. Purple Moon had come filled with killing intent, but she had left like this. Qin Yu subconsciously frowned, hesitation in his eyes. That's normal. Although Purple Moon wants to kill you, Woodchopper Fu is stronger. She doesn't want to tangle with you any longer, so she can only retreat. A smiling voice sounded out from behind him. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. Even at such a close distance, he hadn't sensed anything at all. From this, it could be seen that the person behind him had an extremely terrifying cultivation. If this person had any ill intentions, he would have already suffered. Moreover, this person could casually enter the Tao Arena's top training room, so he should be a cultivator from the Tao Arena. Qin Yu still maintained a certain degree of trust towards the Tao Arena. As he turned around, he was stunned. He was clearly dazzled by this person's beauty. Although he quickly composed himself, he still subconsciously felt regret. Such a beautiful existence wasn't actually a woman. What a pity. Soon, he realized that this sort of thought was a great offense to an unfathomably formidable existence. Qin Yu quickly gathered his thoughts and cupped his hands together. Greetings, Senior. Luckily, Solitary Westgate was already accustomed to this sort of situation. He smiled and said, "Do you think it's a pity that this face wasn't born as a woman?" In truth, sometimes I also think it's a pity. But this is the will of the heavens, so there's nothing I can do about it. These words weren't easy to respond to. Qin Yu could only remain silent. Luckily, someone came over and helped him out. Kong Mingqiao quickly walked over, his expression respectful and excited. He knelt down and touched his forehead to the ground. "I welcome Master's arrival." Solitary Westgate turned around. He frowned and said, "You are Kong Yuan's son. We should have met before." Kong Mingqiao respectfully said, "Reporting to Master, when I was 7 years old, I was fortunate enough to follow my Lord Father to a banquet held by Master." Solitary Westgate nodded. "How is Kong Yuan now?" Kong Mingqiao said, "My father died in meditation 100 years ago. Before he left, he was still thinking about not being able to serve Master at his side. He said that was the greatest regret of his life." Solitary Westgate sighed. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are unavoidable. Only by seizing life from the heavens can one live forever. Kong Mingqiao's eyes were filled with worship, because the person in front of him was a supreme expert who had successfully seized fate from the heavens, a supreme expert who could not be stained by time. Qin Yu was incomparably shocked. Although he had already guessed that this devilishly beautiful man was an important figure in the Tao Arena, he didn't think he would have such an astonishing background. The master of the Tao Arena. He fought with the heavens and retreated unscathed. He sat above the clouds of the 9 heavens, looking down on the boundless world and smiling at the vicissitudes of life. Qin Yu greets the master of the Tao Arena. "I didn't know Senior's status, so I ask for Senior's forgiveness." One couldn't blame Qin Yu for putting on such a humble attitude. This person's status was simply inconceivably high. The Tao Arena Master was one of the absolute strongest existences in the land of divinity and demons. He stood at the peak of the heavens and earth. Solitary Westgate flicked his sleeves and pulled Kong Mingqiao up. He smiled and said, "Qin Yu, I came here today especially for you, but I never thought I would see such a wonderful play." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Is it convenient for you to tell me just how you offended the immortal sect that Purple Moon would want to kill you?" Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. Then, he spoke of what happened between him and Ning Ling, as well as how he was plotted against in the immortal sect. He forced a smile and said, "Thinking about it, it must be that Junior was lucky enough not to die, causing Great Elder Purple Moon to worry. In order to prevent a rift between Ning Ling and the immortal sect, she must have wanted to kill me." Solitary Westgate shook his head. "So that's how it is. The immortal sect's way of doing things is truly displeasing." He looked at Qin Yu and said, "Although I have many areas of dissatisfaction with the immortal sect, I cannot help but acknowledge that they and the demonic path are the strongest influences in the land of divinity and demons. Although I don't fear the immortal sect, I still don't want to casually come into conflict with them. The reason I am saying all of this is to tell you that I originally intended to take you in as a disciple and train you to see whether or not you could have great achievements. This was the wish I made in the past when I created the ancient perishment decree. It's just that I have waited for many years and have never been able to find someone without a master or background. That was until you appeared. Although I am indeed optimistic about you, I have now changed my mind. If I were to take you in as a disciple, that would be the same as standing on the opposite side of the immortal sect. This is not in line with my character and is even more disadvantageous to the Tao Arena." Kong Mingqiao revealed a look of sympathy. Great Elder Purple Moon had arrived today. Although she hadn't been able to kill Qin Yu, she had destroyed his chance to change his destiny. Just this alone was enough to cause unimaginable losses. But what surprised him was that Qin Yu didn't seem to be disappointed at all. He respectfully bowed and said, "Senior, Qin Yu doesn't dare to have any extravagant hopes of becoming Senior's disciple. But, if I may be so bold today, I hope that Senior can help me with something." Solitary Westgate's eyes flashed. "Today, it can be said that I broke my promise, so I should give you some compensation. What do you want to do? Speak." Qin Yu said in a low voice, "This junior wants to know how Ning Ling is right now." Solitary Westgate smiled. "That isn't difficult." As he spoke, he lifted a hand and grasped out. Qin Yu frowned. He could feel a part of something that he couldn't see or touch vanish from his body. Solitary Westgate's fingers grasped the air and a disc appeared. This disc emitted a faint aura that gradually emerged from it. "Investigate." The disc trembled slightly before it began to spin rapidly. The aura within it began to churn, vaguely outlining an illusory figure. Although it was blurry, it caused Qin Yu's heart to shake. A look of excitement appeared in his eyes. It was Ning Ling. But at this time, there was a light cracking sound and Ning Ling's phantom on the disc shattered. Solitary Westgate frowned, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Senior, what is going on? How is Ning Ling right now?" Qin Yu anxiously asked, not bothering to be rude. Solitary Westgate withdrew his hand and scattered the disc. He said, "My aura searching technique can trace back time and yin and yang. It's just that your friend, for some reason, has been shielded from prying eyes. But, I can tell you that she is doing well. It's just that the aura connection between you and her is constantly weakening." Qin Yu relaxed. He no longer cared about the weakening of the aura connection. As long as Ning Ling was safe, nothing else mattered. He smiled and respectfully bowed. "Thank you for Senior's help. This junior is deeply grateful. Solitary Westgate waved his hand. He suddenly said, Chinyu, do you know how many cultivators in the land of divinity and demons are willing to pay any price to be my disciple? Don't you feel it's a pity at all? Kong Mingqiao nodded again and again, a puzzled expression on his face. After learning that Ningling was safe and sound, Chinyu let out a breath of relief. But now that he heard this, he immediately felt a bit nervous. These words weren't easy to respond to. If he said he didn't care, wouldn't that mean he looked down on this Dao Arena master who overlooked the world? But in truth, he didn't feel it was a pity at all. With the guidance of a master, he could save a great deal of trouble in cultivation. Moreover, if he entered the Dao Arena master's tutelage, he would obtain a great backer and his safety would rise. But this wasn't without its drawbacks. Disregarding everything else, the most important thing was the secret of the little blue lamp. If he was frequently exposed in front of such a powerhouse, Chinyu didn't have full confidence he could hide this secret forever. Once he was discovered, although he didn't know what the Dao Arena master would do, Chinyu didn't doubt the allure of the little blue lamp at all. It was impossible for him to risk his own life to test the Dao Arena master's character and integrity. Moreover, Chinyu cultivated the five-element mountain and also had the existence of a small world that could greatly increase the speed at which he perceived the rules. He had already found a great Dao that led straight to the peak, so he didn't need to rely on the guidance of a master. As long as he was given enough time, he could definitely rise up and become a pivotal existence in the land of divinity and demons. Of course, this was something he could think about, but if he said it, it would be a completely different version. For instance, this junior is extremely disappointed. If possible, I would also like to follow senior and cultivate. My cultivation would definitely advance by leaps and bounds in a single day. Unfortunately, I am well aware that I don't have the qualifications to have senior create irreconcilable conflicts with the immortal sect for me. Since the result cannot be changed, I can only act as calmly as possible. I hope that I can obtain senior's appreciation and help me in other aspects. These words sounded reasonable and sincere. But for some unknown reason, Solitary Westgate felt that something wasn't right. Really? He had a scrutinizing expression. Chinyu nodded again and again. This junior wouldn't dare to deceive you. Solitary Westgate shook his head. Whatever, you can think however you want. I will remove your status as a disciple and will only help you use the aura searching technique once. This is a bit unfair to you. How about this? I guarantee that as long as you stay in Four Seasons City, no one will threaten your safety. He turned to leave but then stopped. There is one more thing I must remind you of. It is best not to use the identity of Chinyu in the future. Besides the immortal sect, that old fellow who fought with Purple Moon today has also taken a liking to your mortal body. He has lived for far too long and will need to change to a more suitable mortal body. This can be considered as free news. For better or worse, I saved you today, so I can't just watch you die in a daze. Solitary Westgate took several steps forwards. His figure gradually faded until he vanished like a wisp of fog. Kong Mingqiao fell to his knees. Farewell, master. Chinyu's complexion stiffened and a cold chill drilled out from his heart. He never imagined that woodchopper Fu, who he had been secretly grateful to deal with Purple Moon, was actually a wolf. He had taken a liking to his mortal body, just thinking about it left his entire body cold. Kong Mingqiao stood up, a bit of regret in his eyes. But to be able to see his master again was already a great stroke of good fortune. Soon, his mood calmed down. He looked at Chinyu. From his expression, it wasn't hard to guess what he was thinking. He thought for a moment and said, "Fellow Daoist Chinyu, Woodchopper Fu is an extremely terrifying almighty being. Although he wasn't able to fight with the heavens and seas life, when compared to true powerhouses, he is only a bit weaker. Moreover, Woodchopper Fu knows everything and acts without scruples. You must be careful. Qin Yu forced a smile. I thank Arena Steward Kong for the reminder. Beneath the starry skies, solitary Westgate stepped forwards. Below him were lush forests and the air was warm and moist. It was clear that this place was far away from Four Seasons City and belonged to the southern region of the land of divinity and demons where the climate was warm and humid. With a powerhouse's cultivation, they could cross space and cross endless distances with a thought. For them, this was an extremely simple matter. A mountain peak appeared in his line of sight. The mountain wasn't high and there wasn't anything strange about it. Halfway up the mountain, there was a courtyard that occupied several acres of land. Solitary Westgate's eyes flashed with a gentle light. He stepped forwards and landed at the entrance to the courtyard. Several servants hurriedly bowed and opened the doors. Solitary Westgate restrained his aura and stepped into the courtyard. A beautiful woman in her 30s was holding the hand of a 7 or 8-year-old child, waiting outside the main hall. Father! The child cheered. He ran forwards like a gust of wind and threw himself into his arms. Solitary Westgate hugged him and kissed him hard on the cheek. He laughed. Did you miss your father? I did. And Ning missed father. You were gone for a long time this time. The child hugged him tightly. This time, father must stay at home for a longer period of time. The beautiful woman had a loving expression. She walked over and grabbed the child's hand. And Ning, father must be tired from the journey. Hurry and come down. Solitary Westgate reached out a hand and lifted a strand of his wife's hair. It's fine. You haven't eaten yet, right? I want to drink Yunyang's lotus seed soup. The beautiful woman blushed red. She glared at him. Okay, I will go prepare it now. Night fell and the courtyard gradually quieted down. Solitary Westgate stood in front of the bed, looking at the sleeping mother and son. His expression was incomparably gentle, but there was a trace of pain and guilt in his eyes. Yunyang and Ning, I will definitely succeed, I will. He lifted a hand. His 10 fingers danced and runes appeared, emitting a warm and pure white light. They were like snowflakes that fused into the bodies of the mother and son. As the runes fused, the bodies of the woman and child on the bed gradually became transparent. One could clearly see that their bodies were formed by the condensation of countless laws. The runes that fused in were repairing the broken and incomplete rules within their bodies. This was because the dead would inevitably disperse. Even if the strongest powerhouse in the world succeeded in seizing fate from the heavens, it was impossible to forcefully keep the dead in this world. After a long time, Solitary Westgate drew back his hand. His wife and son's bodies gradually returned to normal. He lowered his head and covered them with a blanket. Then, he pushed open the door and left. Above his head, a silver moon shined brightly. He stood in the moonlight, silent. Moonlight condensed in front of him and a strange 3-legged bird appeared. It tilted its head and looked at him, saying, Since you found the person you were calculating the turning point for, why did you let him leave? Solitary Westgate had a light expression. Woodchopper Fu didn't want to die. He bitterly persisted for countless years and changed bodies countless times. But the more he didn't want to die, the more he couldn't escape the entanglement of death. He was doomed to never be able to transcend. I suddenly had a thought. As the saying goes, you can't get what you want. Maybe everything should go with the flow. If Qin Yu can rise up in the future, then my actions today have already sown karma with him. I naturally have a way to have him help me. If he perishes midway, then that means he isn't the person I'm waiting for. If so, then why waste time on him? The strange 3-legged bird spread its wings and nimbly walked in the air. Are you sure you aren't afraid? Afraid that all of your waiting will come to nothing. Solitary Westgate frowned. The strange three-legged bird lifted its wings. Fine, consider it me speaking too much. It turned and flapped its wings. Its body turned into a beam of moonlight that shot straight into the silver moon in the skies. As it submerged into it, its voice spread out from afar. Although you don't like to hear it, I must remind you that as someone who has transcended life and death, why cling to those who have already died? Freeing them from suffering isn't necessarily a bad choice. Solitary Westgate was silent. His eyes gradually brightened. Freeing them from suffering, no, I can definitely do it, definitely. Qin Yu, if you are the person I am waiting for, then you will definitely give me hope. The great storm that swept through Four Seasons City spread through the world at an astonishing speed. The battle between Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace's Great Elder Purple Moon and the ancient and mysterious woodchopper Fu had stolen all of the limelight. Qin Yu, who was ranked 9th on the ancient perishment decree, was actually unremarkable. But in the dark, countless influences were guessing why Great Elder Purple Moon wanted to kill Qin Yu so badly. Soon, everything that occurred in the infinite realm that involved Ning Ling was discovered. There were many people who had witnessed this, and it was impossible to hide this information. It was clear that Great Elder Purple Moon wanted to kill Qin Yu because of this. The Immortal Sect was silent, not responding to this matter. But news began to spread out from within the Immortal Sect. Great Elder Purple Moon's direct disciple Ning Ling had died because of Qin Yu. Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace had lost a proud son of heaven that had a high chance of inheriting the position of Palace Master. Everything became reasonable. Although no one knew why Ning Ling had died and why Qin Yu, who had been taken away by the Immortal Sect, would appear in Four Seasons City, none of this was important. What was important was that the Immortal Sect had enough reason to condemn Qin Yu to eternal damnation. This caused the bright halo of the ancient perishment decree's 9th-ranked genius to instantly fade away. The countless influences that had gathered in Four Seasons City dispersed in a single day. The reason was simple. A proud son of heaven on the ancient perishment decree did indeed have infinite potential. But the other explanation for this infinite potential was that they needed time to grow. Would the Immortal Sect allow Qin Yu to continue living and grow into a threat? The result was obvious. In the eyes of many people, the current ancient perishment decree's 9th-ranked genius didn't have long to live. He was also a great source of disaster. Anyone who approached Qin Yu would be targeted by the Immortal Sect and suppressed. In this sort of situation, they naturally had to keep a respectful distance. But there were always exceptions to everything. Qin Yu looked at the sincere Qian Duo in front of him, a look of surprise in his eyes. Elder Qian, do you not know my current situation? Qian Duo smiled. Although the South End bloodline has fallen into desolation, we still have channels of information. But we still hope that little friend can join South End Mountain. All of our conditions will remain the same. If little friend has any dissatisfaction, please speak up and we can discuss it further. In truth, Qin Yu was a bit moved. Today was different from yesterday. There was no need to doubt South End Mountain's sincerity. Unfortunately, if he wanted to take revenge on the Immortal Sect, the demonic path was his only choice. If he really joined South End Mountain, that would only bring disaster to them. He cupped his hands together and said, "Thank you, Elder Qian. This junior is incomparably grateful. But I have my own difficulties and cannot join South End Mountain. I ask that Elder Qian forgive me." Qian Duo bitterly smiled. He sighed, "It looks like little friend has no fate with my South End bloodline." He flipped his hand and took out something. This jade slip represents your status as an outer elder of the South End Mountain Sect. I hope that little friend will accept it. I don't dare to ask for too much, but I hope that in the future when a great calamity befalls my South End bloodline, if little friend has the strength to spare, you can ensure that the inheritance of my South End mountain doesn't perish. Of course, if the crisis is too great, little friend can stay out of it. Just think of it as me asking for peace of mind. Qian Yu hesitated for a moment. He reached out a hand and received the jade slip. All right, I agree. Qian Duo was overjoyed. He spoke a few more words and then bid his farewells. Looking at the jade slip in his hand, Qian Yu bitterly smiled. If he wasn't careful, he would have found another shackle for himself. But since he had already agreed, there was no need to think too much about it. Moreover, South End Mountain was a large sect in the end and they also had almighty beings presiding over it. Perhaps they wouldn't need his help at all. He shook his head and prepared to put away the jade slip. Then, a look of surprise appeared in Qian Yu's eyes. He probed it with his divine sense. There was an enormous space within this jade slip. Currently, it was filled with all sorts of items. There were even several spirit stone mountains. Good heavens, after several glances, he could tell that the items in the jade slip were worth at least several 100 million spirit stones. How extravagant! Qian Yu withdrew his divine sense. He thought back to how Qian Duo had hurriedly left just now. It was clear he was afraid he would refuse to accept it if he saw it. Chapter 446. After the storm had passed, life had to continue. The cold poison within Ning Liang's body still needed to be carefully eliminated. This servant greets Grand Authority Qin. In the morning light, the three maids respectfully bowed. Out of the corner of their eyes, they saw a black-robed young man in front of them. His eyes were pitch black and his face was sharp and angular. He was definitely a handsome man. Qian Yu nodded. Creak, the door opened from the inside and Ning Liang quickly walked out. As she saw Qian Yu, she was startled for a moment before bowing. Ning Liang greets Grand Authority Qin. Her cheeks inadvertently blushed red. She had imagined Qian Yu's appearance countless times, and it was only today that she discovered that this was what he should look like. His figure gradually overlapped with her imagination, without any flaws at all. Qian Yu smiled. Miss Ning, there is no need to be so polite. Come, let us begin the treatment. Since his identity had already been made public, there was no need to hide it in private. After all, his appearance was no longer a secret in the infinite realm. Closing the door, Ning Liang bent her knees. Qian Yu flicked his sleeves and stopped her. He frowned and asked, why? Ning Liang's face was filled with guilt. If it weren't for saving me, Grand Authority Qin wouldn't have revealed his identity and the series of dangers that followed wouldn't have occurred. I have truly let you down. Qian Yu pulled her up. It's not your fault. He paused for a moment and then continued, there is an irreconcilable grudge between me and the immortal sect. If they want to deal with me, it is only a matter of time. Moreover, I was the one who took the initiative to save you. It has nothing to do with you. But, Qian Yu smiled. I'm safe and sound now, aren't I? Alright, don't think too much. Calm down and get on the bed. I'll check the cold poison in your body first. Ning Liang obediently nodded, a look of deep gratitude in her eyes. A certain thought in her heart became increasingly firm. For Qian Yu to treat her like this, besides giving herself to him and serving him for the rest of her life, what else could she do to repay him? Immortal sect. Within the cultivation room, Ziyu was sitting cross-legged. Above her head was the phantom of a small world that was about a foot wide. It was glowing faintly. The halo enveloped her and continuously merged with her body, healing her internal injuries. After a long time, Purple Moon let out a deep breath and slowly opened her eyes. The phantom world above her head disappeared. The heaven-splitting saber art truly lives up to its reputation, she said in a low voice, her eyes cold. During the battle in Four Seasons City, it seemed like they were evenly matched on the surface. But in Purple Moon's heart, she was well aware that she had already lost. Woodchopper Fu's saber had broken through her sword Dao. In a life-or-death battle, it would be difficult for her to escape unscathed. As expected of the old man who had the strength of an omnipotent expert even though he had yet to become one. But Woodchopper Fu's path forward had already been cut off. He could only constantly change his body and struggle under the suppression of the world. But she still had the possibility of making another breakthrough. He would remember this debt for the time being. Suddenly, Ziyu's eyes flashed. She stood up, took a step forward, and disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared in the main hall and slowly sat down, looking at the entrance of the hall. Faint traces of light gathered, outlining two figures. Their faces were blurry, but their eyes were bright and clear, as if they could see through all things. Purple Moon sat motionless. She lightly said, "My two lords, why have you come to my Nine-Heaven Mirror Moon Palace today?" Within the immortal sect, with Purple Moon's status, it didn't take a genius to know who they were. Purple Moon, during the storm in Four Seasons City, you were far too impulsive. The figure on the left calmly said. The figure on the right nodded. What sort of status do you and I have? We look down on this vast world, so how could we make such a big fuss over a mere junior? It would be beneath us. A cold light flashed in Ziyu's eyes. Two lords should know why I want to kill Qin Yu. If he doesn't die, my heart will never be at peace, nothing must happen to Ningling. After a brief silence, the figure on the left said, killing Qin Yu isn't difficult, so why cause such a ruckus? Calamity immortals don't easily appear in the world. It isn't that you and I want to remain mysterious, but that the world doesn't have much tolerance for us. You have yet to seize life from the heavens, so you must pay extra attention. You cannot be careless. Ziyu was silent for a moment. Then, she nodded. I will remember. Thank you Nether Domain Master for the reminder. Ningling is indeed important. She concerns the future of Nine-Heaven Mirror Moon Palace. I will order someone to draw in the aura of the world and use the Great Curse Law to kill Qin Yu. The other figure was naturally the sovereign of Mount Innerheart's Buddhist kingdom. Ziyu's eyes brightened. Good. Then I'll have to trouble Lord Nation Ruler. In the room, Ningling's eyes were tightly closed. She lay on the bed, her body tense and trembling from time to time. It could be seen that she was withstanding an extremely horrifying pain. Qin Yu lifted a hand. His two fingers formed a sword and he placed it between her eyebrows. What he was dispelling today was the cold poison that occupied the meridians in her brain. This was also the last place in Ningling's body that hadn't been cleared. The meridians in the brain were the most concentrated and also the weakest part of the human body. They were also closely linked to the soul, so he had to be extremely careful in the treatment process. Any accident would cause tremendous damage to Ningling. The treatment continued for 12 hours. From the moment the sun rose in the east until the moment the sun set in the west, it still hadn't ended. Qin Yu carefully controlled the medicinal efficacy of the Blazing Sun integration pill, spreading it through her tiny and fragile meridians, slowly dissolving and removing all of the cold poison. The light gradually faded away. Because the lighting array formation in the room hadn't been activated yet, it remained silent. Only the faint light that shined through the door and windows allowed one to vaguely see their surroundings. Suddenly, Ningling lightly coughed. All of the pain in her body vanished and a warm flow of heat started from her head, rapidly sweeping through her entire body. This feeling was like she was soaking in a warm spring. It was a comfortable feeling she had never felt in her life. Qin Yu opened his eyes, revealing a weary look. But he couldn't help but smile. Seeing Ning Ling's pleasantly surprised and expectant gaze, he nodded. Miss Ning, the cold poison in your body has been completely dispelled. It will no longer trouble you. Although she had already received Qin Yu's warning before the treatment began, only after experiencing the torment of the cold poison did she realize just how overjoyed Ning Ling was right now. She screamed out loud. She sat up and hugged Qin Yu. Thank you. Thank you. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Because of the treatment, Ning Ling had sweated a great deal. Her dress was soaked through and stuck to her body. As she hugged Qin Yu, an astonishing sensation spread out from where their skin touched. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat and he revealed an awkward expression. But he soon composed himself. Thinking for a moment, he reached out and held Ning Ling in his arms. He smiled and said, "It's all right. You have just recovered from a serious illness and you need to rest. Emotional fluctuations aren't good for you." After a long time, Ning Ling's tears finally stopped. She crawled up from Qin Yu's chest, a look of shock on her face. She subconsciously pulled the blanket over her chest. "I'm sorry, I was too excited. Grand Authority Qin, please don't mind me." Qin Yu coughed. He stood up and turned his back to her. "Have the maid come in and help you tidy up. I'm a bit tired, so I'm going back to rest first." Watching him push open the door and leave, Ning Ling's eyes revealed a bit of shyness. But there was even more worship and gratitude. In the past, she was in a precarious situation where she could die at any moment, so she didn't dare to think too much about it. But now that she had recovered, she no longer needed to withstand the torment of the cold poison. She could live for a long time and also had the qualifications to pursue the person she liked. The next day, the carefully dressed Ning Liang managed to use her beauty to leave Qin Yu stunned. Although he quickly recovered, this caused Ning Liang to feel a bit shy and happy at the same time. "Miss Ning's beauty is breathtaking. I fear it won't be long before your name will spread far and wide." Qin Yu smiled, a bit of sadness hidden deep in his eyes. The increasingly beautiful Ning Ling became more and more similar to Ning Ling. If it weren't for the great difference in their temperaments, it would have been hard to tell them apart. Otherwise, how could Qin Yu, who had been dazzled by solitary Westgate's beauty not too long ago, lose his composure like this? "Everything is bestowed upon me by Grand Authority Qin. If it weren't for you, Ning Ling would never have been reborn. I will forever remember your great graciousness. If there is anything you need in the future, Ning Ling is willing to do anything for you." She mustered up the courage to say these words, but the truth was that there was a strong hint in them. Qin Yu wholeheartedly regarded her as a junior and didn't think too much about it, so he didn't notice this. "Good. If there is such a day, I won't be polite." Qin Yu smiled as he spoke. Ning Ling was a bit disappointed, but as she looked at Qin Yu, her eyes filled with even more worship. For him to be able to maintain his pure thoughts at this time, he really was a gentleman. "Grand Authority Qin, my grandfather will arrive at Four Seasons City the day after tomorrow to personally thank you. I ask that you give my Ning family a chance." Qin Yu was silent for a moment. He said, "Miss Ning, I didn't help you for the sake of my Ning family, so there is no need to thank me." "How can that be?" Ning Ling anxiously said, "You saved me. This is a great graciousness and my Ning family must express our gratitude." Qin Yu shook his head. He bluntly said, "Miss Ning, you should know my current situation. The immortal sect is filled with malice towards me. If the Ning family is too close to me, I fear you will be implicated." Ning Ling relaxed. "So that's how it is. Grand Authority Qin, rest assured that no matter how overbearing the immortal sect is, they won't do anything to my Ning family. She continued to explain, although our Ning family has fallen into decline, because of my father, we obtained the title of a noble family of the demonic path long ago and have been sheltered by the demonic path for 10,000 years. If the immortal sect were to attack our Ning family, that would be the greatest provocation to the demonic path. Thus, the immortal sect won't make things difficult for us. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. May I ask, Miss Ning, who is your father? Ning Ling's eyes darkened. My father, Ning Yunhai, entered the demonic path in his early years and obtained the title of the demonic path's demon son. Afterwards, because he violated a taboo of the demonic path, he was expelled from the demonic path. But soon, she revealed a smile. Many people say that my father's cultivation was wasted and he has become a cripple. But, I believe that one day he will definitely stand up once more and make those people that look down on him and laugh at him realize just how blind they were. I heard that Miss Ning's father violated a taboo because he had a Tao companion. As for your mother. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. I apologize. If Miss Ning doesn't wish to say, then just pretend that I didn't ask. Ning Ling bitterly smiled. This isn't a secret and I have already accepted this reality. Grand Authority Qin, there is no need to worry about it. That's right, my mother came from the immortal sect and her status was extremely honored. Thus, when she married with my father, it caused a great storm that separated my family and my wife. That's right. Everything was correct. There were no more accidents. Qin Yu was overjoyed. In the future, when Ning Ling learned that she not only had a mother but that she had even more relatives in the land of divinity and demons, she would definitely be happy. Ning Ling was a very smart girl. She looked at Qin Yu and hesitated for a moment. Then, she said, Grand Authority Qin, the reason you are asking about this is because you helped me, right? Chapter 447. Ning Liang's heart ached. Although she knew that the chances of Qin Yu being infatuated with her were very, very small, when she finally confirmed this matter, she still felt as if a piece of her heart was missing. It was empty and sad. She squeezed out a smile and tried to keep her voice calm. Grand Authority Qin, what is the relationship between you and my Ning family? Qin Yu's eyes turned gentle and his lips curved up in a smile. She is my Tao companion. Although we haven't held any ceremonies and we haven't spent much time together, in my heart she is already an indispensable person in my life. I'm sorry, but this is all I can tell you. If there is a chance in the future, you will definitely see her and she will tell you everything. From Qin Yu's expression before he spoke, Ning Liang had already guessed what was going on. But as she listened, she discovered that it was extremely difficult to maintain her composure. She tried several times but couldn't even reveal a smile. Qin Yu's eyes flashed with an apologetic light. But, he still wanted to tell Ning Liang not to have any feelings for him. As Ning Liang's little sister, she could only be his little sister. Grand Authority Qin, I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable. I'll be excusing myself first. Ning Liang didn't know how she left. It was only when she returned to her room that she regained her composure, a bitter look in her eyes. Was this Qin Yu's refusal? He must love that woman very, very much, and that woman's luck was truly enviable. The next day, Ning Liang didn't appear. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He knew that at this time he couldn't be the least bit soft-hearted and give her any misconceptions about his feelings. Otherwise, it would only cause her to fall deeper and deeper until she was finally unable to extricate herself. In his chamber, Qin Yu calmly cultivated, quietly perceiving the large success of the metal path within his body. It was like a gem in a river. As the water washed away the dirt on its surface, it gradually became dazzling. After reaching large success of the metal path, it would constantly improve itself until it reached perfection. Then, it would drive Qin Yu's cultivation to cross the divine soul barrier and step into the blue sea realm. On the third day, the Ning family's old master led a group of Ning family masters to Four Seasons City. Without further delay, they rested for a moment and then sent someone to deliver a visiting card. Qin Yu received the Ning family's old master and the others in the Dao arena. Although solitary Westgate guaranteed that he wouldn't suffer any malicious attacks in Four Seasons City, Qin Yu didn't want to take any risks and chose to stay in the Dao arena. Of course, the suitable cultivation environment in the dojo was also a very important reason. Ning Ruffing greets Grand Authority Qin. Thank you Grand Authority Qin for saving Ning Liang. Although the white-robed old man looked old, his back was straight and his aura was extraordinary. At this moment, he bowed in a straightforward and efficient manner, without the slightest bit of hesitation. Qin Yu naturally couldn't accept this bow. He flicked his sleeves and supported the old man. Old Master Ning, there is no need to be so polite. I have some relationship with the Ning family, so I won't stand by and watch you die. It was clear that old Master Ning had already learned some news from Ning Liang. He knew that Qin Yu didn't want to say too much, so he didn't ask further. Even so, my Ning family has received great graciousness from Grand Authority Qin. We have no choice but to repay it, otherwise others will call us ungrateful. He turned around. Ning Yuntao hurried forward and bowed respectfully. Father, over here. He held a jade box in his hands. It was gray and the quality of the jade didn't seem too good. But one could clearly feel the aura of years emitting from it. It was clear that it had existed for an extremely long period of time. Ning Ruffing took the jade box and smiled. Grand Authority Qin, this jade box is a treasure passed down by my Ning family's ancestors. It has a history of nearly 10,000 years, but no one knows where it came from. There is a sealed space within this box. For the last 10,000 years, the Ning family's cultivators have tried to open it, but in the end they weren't able to find anything. After Chu Taidu learned of this, he schemed against Ning Liang and tried to steal away this jade box. Luckily, Grand Authority Qin helped her and she was able to survive. Today, I will give this jade box to Grand Authority Qin to express my Ning family's gratitude. I hope that Grand Authority Qin will not decline it. Surprise flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. He never thought that this jade box would be the treasure that Chu Taidu had painstakingly desired. He had heard some news from Ning Liang and knew that the Ning family valued it greatly. He immediately said, Old Master Ning, this gift is too precious. I cannot accept it. Ning Ruffing bitterly smiled. It is rumored that there are many treasures hidden within the space within this jade box. But, it has already been 10,000 years and the Ning family hasn't been able to open it. Even if the rumors are true, there is no use for this jade box to remain in the hands of the Ning family. Moreover, after experiencing the matter with Chu Taidu, I have already thought things through. If this jade box continues to remain in the Ning family, I fear it will only bring more harm than good. After all, it is impossible for us to obtain the help of a noble person like Grand Authority Qin every time. Ning Liang knelt down and respectfully kowtowed. Grand Authority Qin, you saved my life, so you are my greatest benefactor. I ask that you accept this jade box. She seemed to have regained her composure, at least on the surface. Her tone was respectful, but she still maintained a certain distance. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment. All right, I will accept it. Thank you, Old Master Ning. He received the jade box with both hands and probed it with his mind. Indeed, there was a space hidden within this jade box. In essence, this jade box and Qin Yu's sealed dimension ring were the same type of treasure. It was just that the sealed space within the jade box wasn't too large. Qin Yu could sense that it was the size of a courtyard. Currently, this space was sealed away by a formidable strength. If one wanted to open it, they would need to know the method to unravel the seal or use absolute strength to shatter it. But the latter was far too brute force. If one was the slightest bit careless, it would affect the jade box itself. If it was destroyed, the sealed space would be lost and it would be impossible to find it again. No wonder the Ning family hadn't been able to open it even after obtaining it for 10,000 years. Of course, from another perspective, this was only a small space and yet it was protected by such a formidable seal. It could be imagined that the treasures hidden within were incomparably precious. Old Master Ning was a shrewd person. He was straightforward in his conduct, but he didn't make others have the least bit of a bad feeling about him. After Qin Yu received the gifts, he paused for a moment and then bid his farewells. Ning Liang and the others left with him. Now that the cold poison in her body had been completely dispelled, there was no reason for her to stay. On the way back, Ning Yuntao held himself back for a long time. Finally, he asked, Liangling, what is going on? Does Grand Authority Qin really have no intentions towards you? Ning Liang sat across from him. She looked down at her feet. Uncle, I've already said that everything is just wishful thinking on our part. Don't mention it again. Ning Yuntao anxiously said, how can we not mention it? Liangling, you have to think this through. Such a perfect husband is something you can't find even if you look for a lantern. Others might worry about the anger of the immortal sect, but our Ning family isn't afraid. At worst we can just move back to the camp assigned to us by the demonic path. This is an extremely rare marriage. Shut up. Old Master Ning opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. Ning Yuntao had an embarrassed expression. Father, I was just anxious. Old Master Ning glared at him. Then, he looked at Ning Liang who was sitting beside him. Girl, you've done well. What sort of status does Qin Yu have? How could he possibly take a fancy to a woman who throws herself at him? He said that he has some relationship with my Ning family, and that relationship comes from his Dao companion. But this is likely only an excuse. This is because in my Ning family's current generation, besides you, there are no other women of suitable age that have had any contact with him. Ning Liang's eyes brightened. She looked up, a bit hesitant. But I don't think Grand Authority Qin is lying. He naturally isn't lying. Old Master Ning faintly smiled. Because the so-called Dao companion that Qin Yu spoke of is you, little girl. Ah. Ning Liang was shocked. Old Master Ning's eyes were filled with wisdom. He had a confident expression, as if everything was in his grasp. Qin Yu doesn't want you to be dragged into his grudge with the immortal sect. Thus, he deliberately said this so that you could draw a clear line between you and him. Ning Yuntao was overjoyed. Yes. Yes. I knew there had to be a reason for this. When Qin Yu looked at Liangling, there was clearly a hint of warmth in his eyes. There was no way I was wrong. Old Master Ning smiled. He patted her hand. That's enough. What you need to do now is to use your actions to tell Qin Yu that you are willing to endure everything together with him. And our Ning family doesn't fear the threat of the immortal sect at all. Ning Liang's heart began to fluctuate. A trace of anticipation rose in her heart. Could this matter really be as her grandfather said? Qin Yu didn't know that his words of warning Ning Liang to keep her distance from him had already been interpreted in a completely different way. Otherwise, he wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. Currently, he was in the Dao Arena's training room. In his hands was the jade box that the Ning family had given him. Just now, Qin Yu had tried many methods, but he hadn't been able to open it. He hadn't even been able to cause the slightest fluctuation to appear on the surface of the seal. As he thought, there was a high chance that the hidden treasure existed. But, if he couldn't open it, it was useless. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He suddenly thought of a possibility. He closed his eyes and sent out a summon. After several breaths of time, the space in front of him quietly parted, revealing a pitch-black nothingness. As this nothingness revolved around him, the phantom of a great sun appeared. The little blue lamp could become the incarnation of a great sun and illuminate the entire small world. It was clear that in the aspect of space, it had an extremely potent ability. Perhaps it could open this sealed space. When Qin Yu sent out a thought fluctuation, a suction force pulled the jade box into the nothingness. Bright sunlight shined down on the jade box. On its plain gray surface, countless seal marks began to appear. These seal marks overlapped with each other. If one didn't know how to open it and touched any one of them, it would cause the strength of the seal to erupt and seal off the spatial door. At a rough glance, there were at least several thousand seal marks. As they overlapped on top of the jade box, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was as impregnable as a fortress. But at this time, beneath the light of the great sun, the seal marks on the surface of the jade box began to rapidly melt away. A moment later, the projection of the little blue lamp vanished and the jade box returned to Qin Yu's hands. He hesitated for a moment and then lifted his hand to press down on the lock. With a loud crack, the jade box opened. There was nothing inside the jade box, but Qin Yu could clearly sense that the spatial door had already opened. Who would have thought that the hidden treasure that had troubled the Ning family for tens of thousands of years would be so easily opened? The little blue lamp was truly the most precious treasure of the heavens and earth. Chapter 448. With the jade box as a medium, there was a small mountain valley within. The edges of the space were extremely stable. It was clear that it had been reinforced before the seal was created. Bursts of medicinal fragrance wafted out. This mountain valley was actually a medicine garden. The medicine garden was only several acres in size, but the climate inside was extremely complex. Flowers bloomed everywhere, and the grass was green. But looking further, there was white snow and the world was freezing cold. Carefully looking around, this several acres of mountain valley actually covered the 4 seasons. If he wasn't wrong, this complex environment should have been created to create the most suitable environment for the spirit plants to grow in. Every medicine garden was covered in spells that isolated the internal climate. This also ensured that pollen wouldn't mix together and cause the medicinal properties of the spirit plants to be destroyed. The sealed space of the jade box actually hid a medicine garden. Who would have thought this would happen? Qin Yu sighed inwardly. His divine sense opened the first medicine garden spell and a rich medicinal fragrance wafted out. He swept his eyes over it, marked black orchid, vine leaf grass, thousand-star seed, moon-swaying flower. Each one was a rare spirit plant, the finest of the finest, all of them priceless. Moreover, many of these spirit plants had already gone extinct. They belonged to the type that couldn't be bought no matter how many spirit stones one had. Medicine garden, medicine garden. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred and his eyes brightened. He couldn't be bothered to observe these spirit plants anymore. Instead, he spread out his divine sense. Soon, Qin Yu was overjoyed. His divine sense covered a spirit plant near the center of the medicine garden. It was around a foot tall and its trunk was only as thick as a knuckle. However, its skin was cracked and it exuded the aura of endless years. Its leaves were like lotuses, its branches like plums, and its roots were white. If he wasn't wrong, it should be called Lotus Plum White. That's right, it was such a straightforward name. Thinking about it, the person who first discovered this spirit plant was far too lazy and named it after its characteristics. However, Chinyu didn't have the mind to care about why its name was so strange. His divine sense stirred and the lotus plum white vanished. In the next moment, it appeared in Chinyu's hand outside. He lowered his head and carefully examined it. As he smelled the sweet scent coming from the leaves, Chinyu revealed a happy smile. The reason was simple. The lotus plum white was one of the 36 soul treasures that the soul summoning bell needed to establish the altar. Although the medicine garden wasn't large, it was divided into dozens of different-sized medicine fields. Now, he had only opened one of them and he had discovered lotus plum white. Perhaps there were even more. Without any hesitation, Chinyu's divine sense entered the medicine garden once more. When he opened the fourth medicine field, there really was a harvest. Shwa, a vine with blue flowers blooming on it appeared in his hand. The flowers were like bells, and as soon as he touched them, they would instantly close and emit an illusory aura. 1,000 illusion blue flower vines. The second was the soul treasure needed to build the altar. In the 9th herb field, he found frost soul cold silk. This kind of spirit plant that grew in bitter cold places had extremely high requirements for the outside environment. In the 16th herb field, he found a snake orchid. The 22nd herb field. An hour later, Chinyu had searched through the entire medicine garden. He had found 9 types of soul treasures needed to construct the altar, a quarter of the total. This could really be called an unintentionally planted willow that grew into a shade. Chinyu never imagined that after delaying Ning Liang for a month, he would actually have such a great harvest. After a moment of pleasant surprise, Chinyu's eyes flashed. He discovered that his thoughts had strayed too far into the wrong direction. 36 different soul treasures were indeed rare and precious. But the land of divinity and demons was vast and boundless. There was bound to be a certain number of them left in the world. It was just that everyone knew that they were incomparably precious and there were only a few of them, so no one would easily sell them. If he only bought them with spirit stones, he feared he wouldn't have much of a harvest even if he busied himself for 4 months. But now, Chinyu seemed to have found a shortcut. When he treated Ning Liang, he didn't think he would receive any rewards from the Ning family. But the truth was that he had obtained an astonishing harvest. Then, could he issue alchemy missions to the outside world, and the reward would be the remaining 27 soul treasures. With the little blue lamp in hand and in addition to Chinyu swallowing Grandmaster Yao's soul, his alchemy skills had greatly improved. With this, he could refine the vast majority of pills in this world. In other words, this road was actually possible. Moreover, if everything went smoothly, then he really might be able to gather all the treasures in 4 months and smoothly complete the soul summoning bell's master recognition. How stupid, why didn't he think of this before? The truth was that Chinyu hadn't recognized his own strength. He subconsciously thought that in the land of divinity and demons where masters were like clouds, alchemy skills would also rise by leaps and bounds, and that his own strength wasn't enough to support this method of gathering treasures. But the truth was that with Chinyu's current alchemy strength and the cooperation of the little blue lamp, even if he couldn't be considered at the peak of the land of divinity and demons, he still stood at the second highest level. Grand Authority Qin wasn't just a title, but also a recognition of his strength. He found Kong Mingqiao and after a simple discussion, Arena Steward Kong was more than happy to help Chinyu issue alchemy missions to the outside world. After seeking the Ning family's opinion, the matter of Ning Liang's treatment became the best publicity. After all, the Blazing Sun integration pill used in the treatment was more than enough to prove Chinyu's alchemy skills. Soon, the ancient Parishment Decree's 9th-ranked Chinyu issued alchemy missions. This news rapidly spread through Four Seasons City and continued to radiate outwards. What also spread along with it was the reward that Chinyu had drawn up for alchemy. Depending on the difficulty of the alchemy, one would need to pay with 1 to 3 of the 27 treasures on the list. Immortal Sect. In a secret underground temple, Purple Moon, the Nether Domain Master, and the Buddhist nation sovereign all sent their projections down. Several black-robed cultivators had solemn expressions as they made the final arrangements in the temple. The Buddhist nation sovereign lightly said, "Today, I have gathered several of the strongest people who cultivate the great curse art. I will personally take over Qin Yu's aura. It will be difficult for him to escape this calamity." Purple Moon lowered her head. "Thank you, Lord Sovereign. I will wait and see." Soon, a black-robed person stepped forwards and respectfully bowed. "Three lords, we have finished our preparations. We can begin at any time." The Buddhist nation sovereign stepped forwards. "Prepare yourselves." He lifted a hand and pointed at the void in front of him. A phantom of a world slowly unfolded. Although this was only a phantom, this phantom was nearly identical to the real world. One could even find the existence of the land of exiles within this phantom world. The Buddhist nation sovereign lifted a hand and the phantom world rapidly expanded. Finally, a miniature version of Four Seasons City appeared. Looking down, one could faintly see a massive number of cultivators moving about in this phantom city. It was like they had really captured a synchronized image of Four Seasons City. He was truly worthy of being a true immortal sect overlord. He had smoothly seized life in a battle against the heavens and become an existence of the strongest powerhouse. His strength and methods were incomparably terrifying, unfathomably deep. The Nether Domain Master smiled. The sovereign supernatural power that reflects the world is becoming increasingly exquisite. "I truly admire you." Purple Moon's eyes shook, revealing a trace of excitement. Although she knew that she was still a distance away from becoming an ultimate powerhouse, when she first fought with Woodchopper Fu, she had recognized the disparity between them. Now that she saw the Buddhist nation sovereign take action, she realized just how terrifying an ultimate powerhouse was. "Qin Yu, the strongest powerhouse of my immortal sect, has taken action, so how can you not die?" The Buddhist nation sovereign closed his eyes, as if sensing something. After a long time, he lifted a hand and grasped forwards. A wisp of pale white aura flew out from the phantom of Four Seasons City. At the same time, Qin Yu, who was cultivating in the Tao arena, felt his heart skip a beat. He opened his eyes. Although he didn't discover anything, his mind was filled with fear, as if some great danger was about to arrive. But now, he was staying in Four Seasons City and also residing in the Tao arena. As the master of the Tao arena, Solitary Westgate was one of the highest peak existences in the world. His guarantee wouldn't be empty words. Could it be that the people of the immortal sect were willing to risk angering the Tao arena master to attack him? In the immortal sect's grand hall, the Nether Domain Master smiled. "You and I still have to take into consideration the face of the Tao Arena Master. So, I will take action to conceal my aura so that he won't be able to sense me. That will always be troublesome." He raised his hand and pointed. A wave rippled out and spread throughout the entire underground secret hole. The space was distorted like water ripples, but it didn't cause the slightest bit of harm. It only completely locked down the qi in this place, not allowing it to interact with heaven and earth. The Buddhist nation sovereign grasped a wisp of aura in his hand. His eyes were as faint as a divine god of the highest heavens. "Command, Qin Yu's soul void, descend." With these words, the wisp of aura tumbled about, gradually turning into Qin Yu's figure. At this time, his eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't see his current situation. His face was filled with anger and alarm. With a flick of his sleeves, Qin Yu's soul void fell into the center of the grand hall. There were dozens of black stone slabs placed on the ground. 7 black-robed cultivators stood in different directions. At this time, they all looked up, revealing pairs of green eyes. "Rise!" With a loud shout, the aura of the 7 people erupted, causing the black stone slabs on the ground to erupt with a deep halo of light, thick and viscous like ink. These halos of light flowed like streams. They gathered in the center of the grand hall, forming a black altar. Although this altar was only a bit over 10 feet in size, the aura it emitted was incomparably terrifying. Just by looking at it, one would feel endless panic and fear rise up from the depths of their hearts. The Nether Domain Master revealed a look of praise. Although the path of curses is a side path of the 3,000 Taoist arts and it isn't the path of climbing the Great Tao, it still has its merits. I fear that even if you or I were to be touched by the power of this killing curse altar, we would have to expend some effort. The Buddhist nation sovereign lightly said, the great curse art is a technique passed down from ancient times. Through the endless river of time, it has long since become incomplete. If it were the complete version, its might would be even greater. However, even if it is only an incomplete version, with the 7 of them joining forces, it is still enough to exterminate any cultivator below the calamity immortal realm. This Qin Yu child is indeed extraordinary. If he can rank on the ancient perishment decree, that means he must have obtained an extremely formidable good fortune. But, since I am taking action, I naturally won't give him the slightest chance. Purple Moon, you will soon be able to rest assured. But for this matter, 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace owes my Buddhist nation a favor. Purple Moon had a solemn expression. She said in a low voice, as long as Qin Yu perishes, I will make sure Lord Nation Sovereign is satisfied with this favor. Chapter 449. On the black stone slab, the 7 black-robed cultivators began to chant. Strange and ancient syllables began to echo through the air like a drum. In the void, a cold aura began to multiply. It was like snakes swimming in the darkness, emitting an aura that left one feeling horrified. On the killing curse altar, faint traces of black aura were like living creatures. They wriggled and climbed towards Qin Yu's soul void. Finally, like chains, they tightly wrapped around him. Qin Yu's soul void's face twisted. His eyes widened, revealing endless fear. He struggled but he couldn't free himself from the black aura. The black aura grew tighter and tighter until it finally sank into Qin Yu's soul void, as if it wanted to tear him to pieces. For Season City, Tao Arena's training room. Ah! Qin Yu roared in pain. His face flushed red and blue veins bulged out on his neck, twisting and turning like thick blue snakes. The pain emitted from his soul nearly shattered his consciousness. This pain was like a fresh soul being pressed into a pot of boiling oil, a raging inferno burning at the bottom. Qin Yu believed that his will was strong enough, but at this time he felt that he could collapse at any moment. Moreover, what was most terrifying was that an extremely cold aura suddenly gushed out from his soul, freezing the core of his soul so that he couldn't summon any strength to fight back. The outside was like being fried in oil and the inside was like being frozen in ice. The extreme heat and extreme cold were both painful, and when the two superimposed on each other, the pain was magnified to the extreme. At this time, in the skies above Qin Yu's soul, the quietly shining purple crescent moon suddenly erupted with a dazzling light. Purple light sprinkled down on the surface of Qin Yu's soul like rain, immediately extinguishing most of the burning pain. The moonlight was like a calmly flowing stream, bringing a refreshing feeling to Qin Yu and pulling him back from the brink of collapse. But the purple moon could only offset half of the pain in Qin Yu's soul. It couldn't do anything to the icy cold strength within. At most, it could extend Qin Yu's life. But in the end, he still couldn't escape the fate of his soul dissipating. Suddenly, a black aura drilled out from Qin Yu's soul, extending towards the purple moon above his head. The purple moon trembled and emitted a humming sound, as if it were calling out to something. Within Qin Yu's Dantian Sea, the silent blue sun suddenly erupted with endless light. The phantom of a blue sun appeared in Qin Yu's soul space. Its aura was vast and mighty, representing the light of the world, the nemesis of all darkness. The black aura that drilled out from Qin Yu's soul emitted a miserable scream before being cleanly purified. The blue sun phantom's light shined down on Qin Yu's soul, piercing through the surface and reaching the deepest depths of his soul. A flow of heat suddenly surged out, instantly sweeping away all of the iron-cold strength entrenched in the core of Qin Yu's soul. Shua, Qin Yu opened his eyes and gasped for breath. His black robes were soaked with sweat and there wasn't the slightest bit of blood on his face. The immortal sect. It was definitely an immortal sect. Apart from them, no one else would go through so much trouble and use such a terrifying curse to kill him. Luckily, the purple moon and blue sun had automatically resisted and dissolved their killing curse, otherwise he was sure his soul would have perished. Immortal Sect's secret hole. The Buddhist nation sovereign looked at Qin Yu's soul void that was entangled in the power of the curse. Over half of it had turned black. This was a sign that the power of the curse had seriously corroded it. He lightly said, "He is about to die." Just as his voice fell, Qin Yu's soul void violently trembled. Endless despair appeared in his eyes, as if he could already foresee his fate. Purple Moon's eyes brightened. After becoming the great elder of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace, she rarely experienced such violent fluctuations in her emotions. But Qin Yu was different. Ning Ling's memories had already been sealed away. She was now Xin Yuanin, a peerless proud child of heaven that Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace had secretly raised, the future successor of the palace master. As her cultivation of the sublime lost emotion code deepened, the traces left on her body would gradually be erased until they completely vanished. Qin Yu was the only flaw. Or, it could be said that he was an unavoidable flaw. Although this flaw might not be able to break the seal, Purple Moon couldn't take this risk. She had poured far too much effort into Ningling. The future of Nine Heaven Mirror Moon Palace rested on her shoulders. If she killed Qin Yu, then all the hidden dangers and troubles would completely vanish and everything would return to the right track. Suddenly, Purple Moon frowned. She discovered that the blackness that tainted Qin Yu's soul void had retreated a little and a look of wild joy appeared in his eyes. "Sovereign, what is going on?" The Buddhist nation sovereign had a light expression. "I never thought that this junior would have a hidden card that can resist the power of the killing curse. But this doesn't change anything. It will only cause him to suffer more torment before his death." As expected, the 7 black-robed people formed hand seals at the same time. A black energy drilled out from the killing curse altar and submerged into Qin Yu's soul void. It was like a spear, able to pierce through all obstacles and destroy them. Purple Moon nodded. But, for some unknown reason, she felt a trace of restlessness in her heart. And this feeling left her a little anxious. "Ah!" Pitiful screams echoed out in the hall. At this time, the 7 black-robed cultivators on the black stone slab began to burn with black flames. These flames had no heat at all and emitted an endless cold aura. But they could easily burn everything they touched into nothingness. This was because this was the backlash fire that occurred after the killing curse failed. It was the punishment that the killing curse altar sent down upon them. Even as powerhouses, they were unable to extinguish the flames of the backlash. Or, they might be able to do so, but they would have to pay a great price. The Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were icy cold. He frowned as he quietly watched the 7 black-robed cultivators turn to ashes in the black flames, their bodies and souls extinguished. Purple Moon's complexion darkened. A cold chill gushed out from her, seeming as if the void would freeze over. The Nether Domain Master slowly said, "It looks like you and I have indeed underestimated Qin Yu. For him to grow to his current level in such a short period of time and even become the 9th ranked on the ancient perishment decree, the good fortune he obtained must be far greater than we imagined. The Buddhist nation sovereign's voice was calm. I will order people to investigate this matter. Since I want to kill Chinyu, there is no way he can survive. Purple Moon, I will delay your favor for a period of time. I will accomplish this. Purple Moon was enraged, but she knew that the Buddhist nation sovereign was even more enraged than she was. The 7 people that died today were all masters under the Buddhist nation sovereign's command. Good. I will wait for news from the Buddhist nation sovereign. At this time, Purple Moon frowned, as if she were listening to something. Then, she lifted a hand and a jade slip flew out from the void. She took it and probed it with her divine sense. After several breaths of time, her pupils shrank and she said, 2 lords, I think I know why Chinyu was able to resist the great curse art. She lifted a hand and handed over the jade slip. The Buddhist nation sovereign and nether domain master examined it at the same time. What was recorded within the jade slip was the latest alchemy mission that Chinyu had issued from the 4 Seasons sect. There wasn't anything special about this mission. What they truly paid attention to were the 27 rewards that Chinyu had requested. This is... The nether domain master's eyes brightened. A vast aura flowed out from him, like a great mountain that supported the heavens and supported the earth. To cause a powerhouse to lose control of themselves and cause their aura to leak out, one could imagine just how shaken their mind was. The Buddhist nation sovereign's indifferent eyes flashed with a sharp light. He took a deep breath and calmed his mind. Soul summoning bell. Although Purple Moon had already guessed this, now that it was confirmed, she couldn't help but feel shocked. It had to be known that this was the strongest supreme treasure of the soul that had been lost for countless years. It was rumored that with it, one could experience samsara without their soul being destroyed. To obtain the soul summoning bell, in a sense, that was the same as being a powerhouse. They could seize fate from the heavens and obtain an undying body. Moreover, the most terrifying aspect of the soul summoning bell was that it could allow its master to reincarnate through countless samsara cycles. After accumulating countless samsara cycles, a cultivator's background would become extremely terrifying. This sort of accumulated background would become increasingly profound as time passed. Finally, it would produce a terrifying transformation that would help the master reach an inconceivable boundary. Moreover, the soul summoning bell had many other wonderful uses. If a powerhouse could obtain it and display the might of the soul summoning bell, their strength would skyrocket. Chinyu was just an ant from the land of exiles. How could he obtain such a supreme treasure? Purple Moon couldn't help but admit that at this moment, there was a trace of jealousy in her heart as well as a bit of restlessness. Jealousy was easy to explain, but restlessness lay in the fact that Chinyu always had abilities that surpassed her expectations. Cultivating the primordial singular energy art and not dying was one, ranking on the ancient perishment decree was another, and possessing the soul summoning bell was another. Worry appeared in Purple Moon's heart. She faintly felt that her decision to kill Chinyu was the greatest mistake of her life. But in the blink of an eye, she suppressed this thought. Her eyes became firm once more, leaving behind only an icy cold killing intent. With things having come to this point, there was no turning back. Chinyu could only die, and a dead person would lose all threats. I want it. The Buddhist nation sovereign said, his voice filled with an unprecedented heat. The nether domain master hesitated for a moment and then nodded. In the immortal sect, you are the strongest powerhouse in the soul path. If you obtain the soul summoning bell, you will become an existence that can suppress an era. Regarding this, I have no objections. Purple Moon lowered her head, remaining silent. Although she had the status of one of the immortal sect's 3 giants in name, the massive disparity in strength between them meant that she didn't have the qualifications to meddle in the distribution of the soul-summoning bell. There was a trace of regret in her heart, but this regret soon turned into joy. The Buddhist nation's sovereign was known as the source of compassion, but the compassion in his eyes was different from what the world understood. Qin Yu had the soul-summoning bell, so he was someone that the Buddhist nation's sovereign had to kill. Moreover, he had to kill him before he completed the process of recognizing him as master. Otherwise, even if he killed him, the soul-summoning bell would vanish from the world once more. It was unknown how many years it would take for it to condense once more. Once Qin Yu died, all her worries would disappear. The Buddhist nation's sovereign's eyes flashed. The secret of the soul-summoning bell should only be known by my immortal sect in this world. Thus, killing Qin Yu cannot cause a great commotion. Otherwise, once others discover it, it will cause great waves. Indeed, this matter can only be carried out in secret. It is best not to draw attention. The Nether Domain Master was well aware that once news of the soul-summoning bell leaked out, it would be enough to cause all the supreme elders and powerhouses in the land of divinity and demons to struggle for it. In particular, Qin Yu was currently in the Dao Arena, which was Solitary Westgate's territory. The two of them glanced at each other and could see the dread in each other's hearts. Solitary Westgate was indeed one of the most terrifying people in the world. Up until now, there hadn't been anyone that could force him to use his full strength. It was like a vast sea of stars without end. Even though they were also powerhouses, they didn't have absolute confidence they could win. It was naturally best if there were fewer twists and turns. The Buddhist nation's sovereign lightly said, "Purple Moon, it looks like you will have to take action in the end." The Nether Domain Master nodded. This is indeed the best method. Purple Moon's eyes were ice cold. Two lords, rest assured that I will definitely kill him. Qin Yu had just escaped from death and was secretly rejoicing. But, he never imagined that the reward list he issued would expose a great secret on his body. It wasn't that Qin Yu was careless, but that the method for the soul-summoning bell to recognize a master was recorded in the monster-raising mystic art, and the only correct version of the monster-raising mystic art was in his hands. Chapter 450. The main hall exuded an extraordinary aura. Every inch of it was exquisite and carefully constructed. One could imagine that the person living here had an extraordinary status, but right now it gave off a dilapidated and chaotic feeling. Several cultivators sat down, all of them silent. Their eyebrows were tightly furrowed, every wrinkle on their faces filled with worry and distress. Fellow family brothers, you and I are well aware of the old patriarch's condition, so I won't waste time explaining. The reason I have gathered everyone here today is because of the matter I mentioned a few days ago. The old patriarch's condition is deteriorating and he might pass away at any moment. You and I must make a decision today. Should we ask Qin Yu to refine a longevity pill for us? The cultivator who spoke had dark skin and a square face. Several people in the hall had unnatural expressions. They subconsciously twisted their butts. After several breaths of silence, someone hesitantly said, "If we ask Qin Yu to refine a pill for us, won't we offend the immortal sect? If we arouse the immortal sect's dissatisfaction, I fear we will all turn to ash in an instant." That's right, it's no secret that the immortal sect hates Qin Yu. If we approach him now, it's likely they will vent their anger on us. If it weren't for this, we wouldn't be in such a difficult situation. This decision isn't easy to make. The hall was filled with noise. But, no one dared to easily confirm their stance. They were all hesitating. The square-faced man frowned, a cold intent in his eyes. "Everyone, let me analyze the situation my Zhou family is facing right now. The old patriarch is the only person in my Zhou family that can stabilize the situation. As long as he is alive, no one will dare to have any thoughts towards us. But if the old man dies, a great calamity will descend upon my Zhou family in several years. At that time, which one of us will be able to stay out of it? The complexions of the cultivators in the hall changed. It wasn't that they hadn't thought of this point, but that they subconsciously didn't want to think about it. Now that this was pointed out, all of them panicked. The square-faced man said, "I propose that we immediately head to Four Seasons City and ask for a longevity pill for the old man. As long as the old man can live for another 10 years, we will be able to deal with him and not be uprooted. If you agree, then please raise your hand. If you don't, then let us wait for the great calamity to arrive." After a moment of hesitation, some people objected and some people agreed. Finally, the proposal was passed by a single vote. The square-faced man stood up. "Good. Since we have decided to pass, then I ask fellow brothers to come with me and take out the envious immortal lotus leaves from the clan's storehouse. We will immediately leave for Four Seasons City. Brother Wei, you and I have been best friends for many years and have gone through many life and death situations together. I have no choice but to come to you today. I'm willing to use all the treasures in my possession to exchange for the nether grass in Brother Wei's possession." As he spoke, he stood up and bowed, his pale white robes falling to the ground. "Brother Wei, please promise me." Across from him, the cultivator surnamed Wei bitterly smiled and hurriedly pulled him back. "Brother Zhang, there's no need to do this. Not to mention the fact that I obtained the profound nether grass because of Brother Zhang's help, just based on our friendship, I absolutely won't refuse. If you really have made up your mind, then I will trade it to you at the market price." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "But Brother Wei, you must consider this matter carefully. It is unknown whether or not Qin you can refine the mind and heart pill, but if you transact with him, you will definitely be noticed by the immortal sect. If we're not careful, this might bring about a disaster." Zhang Yunshan was overjoyed. "Thank you, Brother Wei. Thank you, Brother Wei. This little girl is born with a defect, so even if I exhaust all my efforts I can only barely maintain her condition. Only the mind and heart pill can make up for her lack of source, otherwise she won't be able to last a year. Since I brought her into this world, I have the responsibility to take care of her and give her a complete life. If I am truly hated by the immortal sect because of this, then I, Zhang Yunshan, am willing to accept it." "Very well. I hope that the immortal sect can be a bit more magnanimous and not implicate Brother Zhang." The cultivator surnamed Wei stood up. "Brother Zhang, please wait here for a moment. I will immediately go and retrieve the nether grass." Similar events were quietly occurring in several places. Although everyone was in awe of the immortal sect, they all had their own reasons for taking such risks. Thus, the Dao Arena's intelligence network soon received feedback. The fastest person to ask for a pill had already arrived at Four Seasons City with one of the 27 treasures. Qin Yu began to busy himself. He was willing to pay a great price to obtain a spirit pill, but not a single one was easy to refine. The materials needed were also extremely precious. If he lost too many, then the refinement would inevitably fail. Even with the little blue lamp in hand, Qin Yu didn't dare to be careless. He gathered 120% of his concentration and poured it into refining the pill. Qin Yu's busyness left Ning Liang empty-handed. Even if she believed in the old man's judgment and wanted to tell Qin Yu that she was willing to shoulder everything with him, she simply couldn't find a chance to talk to him. Ning Ruffing comforted Ning Liang once more. He told her that a man should focus on cultivation and his career, and that he shouldn't be entangled in the love between men and women. Only by doing so could he have great achievements. The meaning behind his words was that, little girl, you didn't choose the wrong person. Qin Yu was an extremely good marriage partner, so you had to hold on and not be discouraged. Alright, old man Ning had won again. Ning Liang calmed her thoughts and did her best to let go of her pride and modesty. However, if it weren't for the fact that she truly liked Qin Yu, how could she have reached this step? Unfortunately, there was no result. To the east of the Great Chu, at the border of East Yu, there was a small country called Wu. Within the borders of the Wu country was a mountain. This mountain wasn't too high nor was it dangerous, but it was the only holy land of this country. From the royal family down, all of the people held 120% respect and gratitude towards the master of this mountain. Even if they didn't know the true identity of the master of this mountain, it didn't prevent them from knowing that the reason the Wu country was able to survive until now was because of his existence. To be able to suppress the armies of the Great Chu and Yu empires by himself, one needed to possess transcendent strength in order to accomplish this. On this day, outside this mountain that was revered as a holy land within the borders of the Wu country, spatial fluctuations suddenly appeared. A middle-aged man walked out. His appearance was ordinary and his aura was mediocre. But his bright eyes seemed as if they could see through all obstacles in the world, as if they could see through the hearts of others. Standing in the void and looking down at the mountain below, the middle-aged man faintly smiled. He cupped his hands together and said, "Immortal Sect's Chen Zhonglu has come to pay a visit to fellow Daoist Westgate." In the mountain, solitary Westgate was holding a child and speaking in a low voice. His eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly before he smiled. "And Ning, be good. Daddy suddenly remembered that there are some things I haven't done yet. You play with your mother for a bit, I will immediately return." Yun Yang smiled and pulled her child over. "You go, I will accompany him." "Daddy, hurry back." Little Ning smiled and waved her hand. Solitary Westgate nodded. Then, his smile faded and an icy cold light shined in his eyes. He took a step forwards and vanished from sight. When he reappeared, he was in front of Chen Zhonglu. "Immortal Sect's master of the lucid netherworld realm, I wonder why you have come to my home today." His voice was light, but those familiar with him could understand that although solitary Westgate seemed calm, his anger was burning to the heavens. He had many residences, but only this place was his home, the home of his mind. Solitary Westgate didn't allow anyone to come and disturb him. This would cause him to recall events from many years ago that he didn't want to recall. The Nether Domain Master cupped his hands together. "It is my fault for taking the liberty to come here. But, because of fellow Daoist Westgate's warning, I have no choice but to personally make a trip." Solitary Westgate's eyes were ice cold. The Immortal Sect can deal with Qin Yu, but they cannot do so in Four Seasons City. This is my promise and it will not change. The Nether Domain Master shook his head. Elder Purple Moon has the intent to kill Qin Yu. The Sovereign and I have tried to persuade her and she finally changed her mind. She will not personally act, but she will order others to deal with Qin Yu. The reason I came here today is that I hope fellow Daoist Westgate doesn't misunderstand. The Immortal Sect has no hostility towards the Dao arena. Humph. As long as you don't use a strength that Qin Yu cannot contend with in Four Seasons City, I won't care. I thank fellow Daoist Westgate for understanding. The Nether Domain Master smiled. Since that's the case, I won't stay any longer. Farewell. Solitary Westgate suddenly said, "Hold on." He looked up, nebulas swirling in the depths of his eyes. Fellow Daoist Xiao should know that I declared in the past that no almighty being or above could descend into the borders of the Wu Empire. Although fellow Daoist Xiao had a reason for doing so, you still violated the rules I set. The Nether Domain Master frowned. I wonder what fellow Daoist Westgate wants to do. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand. Simple. Just receive a palm from me. As he spoke, his palm fell down, light and without the least bit of aura. The Nether Domain Master's eyes brightened as if he were facing a great enemy. He lifted a hand and also thrust out a palm. Two world phantoms suddenly appeared and then vanished in an instant. They were so fast that it seemed like an illusion. Solitary Westgate stood with his hands behind his back. The Nether Domain Master actually took a step back, a look of praise on his face. Fellow Daoist, Westgate's cultivation is becoming increasingly profound. I admire you. If there is a chance in the future, I ask fellow Daoist Westgate to come visit my immortal sect. I bid my farewells. As he finished speaking, he turned and vanished from the world. Solitary Westgate was expressionless. You want to probe me? It looks like after all these years that I haven't done anything. The restless heart of the immortal sect has begun to stir once more. He looked up. His eyes instantly crossed through space and fell onto Four Seasons City. All of the Dao arenas in the land of divinity and demons were the same as his eyes that he had placed in all directions. He could instantly send his will to any place. Solitary Westgate saw Qin Yu, who was completely focused on refining pills. It was just that there was an invisible aura isolating Qin Yu's body, making it so that even he couldn't see through it. It was a blur. His eyes flashed. As he thought, there were many secrets hidden on Qin Yu's body. But as he said before, when a cultivator walked through the world, which one of them didn't have their own secrets? He had no interest in them at all. On the contrary, the more outstanding Qin Yu's performance was, the more powerful he would be. This was because only if Qin Yu smoothly grew up could he prove that his calculations were correct. Only then would Yunyang and Ning have a true chance of resurrecting. After a moment of hesitation, Solitary Westgate didn't remind Qin Yu. He had obtained a great deal of warning from Woodchopper. There were many things in the world that one couldn't wish for. The more one cared about it, the more likely one would fail. Letting nature take its course wasn't the wrong path. This was a tempering that belonged to Qin Yu. If he could pass it, he would naturally become stronger and stronger. But if he failed, that only proved that this was his fate. He wasn't the fated person he had been waiting for all these years. In the land of divinity and demons, eastward of the Eastern Wu Kingdom was a vast and endless sea region. Space suddenly collapsed and an endless destructive strength swept out in all directions. In that instant, the heavens collapsed and the earth caved in. The calm sea region was like a broken mirror. Waves roared endlessly and endless seawater was sucked into the shattered space, forming a curtain of water that connected the heavens and earth. Millions of sea life forms were affected. They were torn apart in the shaking seawater, turning into blooming flowers of blood. There were countless deaths and injuries. When the strongest powerhouses of the world fought, it wouldn't be a gentle breeze or a gentle rain. It was just that both sides had a tacit understanding to throw the shockwaves far away. On this day, in the eastern district of Four Seasons City, in Chu Taidu's residence, a black-robed cultivator arrived. It was unknown what he took out, but he was immediately welcomed by the guards. Chapter 451. Qi Qing respectfully sent the black-robed cultivator away. Then, he hurried back to the main hall, a look of hesitation on his face. Teacher, do we really have to participate in this matter? Although this disciple is filled with disgust towards Qin Yu, this matter is far too risky. After all, the Dao Arena's attitude is far too ambiguous. Chu Taidu's complexion darkened. He coldly sneered, "Do you think I want to interfere? Although the Ning family's treasures are good, it's fine if I can't obtain them. After all, there is no true grudge between me and Qin Yu. But the one who came today is a messenger from the immortal sect. In other words, this matter is decided by a great figure from the immortal sect." That's right. The great Zhao belongs to the demonic path, but with the strength of the immortal sect, dealing with you and me is easy. They only need to lift a finger to send us beyond redemption. He took a deep breath. I have no choice in this matter. Either I agree or I die. Qi felt a bit of bitterness and fear in his heart. Chu Taidu was originally a very thick thigh, but in front of the immortal sect, he was still incomparably weak. If something happened to Chu Taidu, as the disciple closest to him, he would be the first to suffer. Since I have no choice, I can only do my best and complete the task that the immortal sect has ordered me to do. At that time, even if I offend the Tao arena, I can still obtain the protection of the immortal sect. Chu Taidu was an ambitious and ruthless character. Although he was a bit panicked at first, he soon calmed down. So, the most important thing right now is to complete this matter, otherwise we will truly die without a grave. Qi said, this disciple obeys teacher's instructions. Chu Taidu hesitated for a moment. Qi, tomorrow go to the Tao arena and issue a challenge to Qin Yu. I want to challenge him in alchemy. As the sun rose in the east, Qi had already arrived at the Tao arena. This time, he naturally couldn't be as ostentatious as he was at the Western Mountain Inn. He respectfully handed over a visiting card and stated the reason for his visit. Kong Mingqiao soon obtained the news. His first reaction was that this matter was unusual. Moreover, the Tao arena had revealed that they were taking care of Qin Yu. Even if it was just his status as the 9th ranked on the ancient perishment decree, that was enough for Chu Taidu to forget all unpleasantness and pretend that none of the conflicts had occurred. Even if Qin Yu had been hated by the immortal sect and his future wasn't bright, that didn't mean he would die. Chu Taidu was a smart person. This could be seen from how he had smiled at everything that day and treated Qin Yu so intimately. But today, after a long period of silence, Chu Taidu had suddenly jumped out to challenge Qin Yu. Even if he used the excuse of wanting to compare notes with Qin Yu in alchemy, it seemed like an honorable reason, but it was actually wrong. After some thought, Kong Mingqiao ordered, tell Qi to wait outside for now. If the one who came was Chu Taidu, then he might have needed to give some consideration to his face. But this was only a disciple that ran errands, so there was no need to be polite at all. Kong Mingqiao stood up and quickly left. He soon arrived outside Qin Yu's training room. Because he had been wholeheartedly focusing on alchemy recently, the training room was in a sealed state and no one was allowed to disturb him. Only the distinguished guests of the dojo could use the most advanced cultivation room. Even though Kong Mingqiao was the head of the branch, he did not have the right to open it at will. He tried to contact Qin Yu but didn't receive a response. Kong Mingqiao took out a communication jade slip and imprinted a message onto it. Then, he sent it through a channel within the Tao arena and into the training room. Kong Mingqiao turned and sat down. Towards this person who had nearly become his master's disciple, he believed he had to give him enough attention. This was because the world was constantly changing. The only reason Qin Yu couldn't become his master's disciple was because of external reasons. But, his talent was high enough, so there were infinite possibilities. He looked down at the challenge jade slip on the stone table. He had already looked through the contents, and he couldn't help but reveal a bit of worry. Chu Taidu had come prepared. He hoped that Qin Yu wasn't too confident in himself, otherwise he might suffer a great loss. The Tao arena's highest level training room was naturally equipped with a pill room. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and the 9th province furnace emitted a deep hum. It opened and spat out 3 pills. Faint traces of white energy circulated around the surface of these pills. Just smelling it would shake one's spirit and make one feel much more relaxed. This pill was called the longevity pill. It was one of the more difficult 7th grade pills to refine. If a cultivator swallowed it, they could increase their lifespan by 10 years. But they could only take 3 at most. Taking more would be ineffective. Thus, the 9th province furnace spat out 3 pills. The sound of chewing entered Qin Yu's ears and he bitterly smiled. But, he had already promised the 9th province furnace that any extra pills would belong to him. Otherwise, this gluttonous fellow would have gone on strike. Of course, the advantage was that the 9th province furnace used 120% of its skill to refine the pills, making it much easier for Qin Yu to refine them. With a flick of his sleeves, he placed the 3 longevity pills into jade bottles that he had prepared ahead of time. These jade bottles were specially refined and there were powerful sealing array formations within them that could lock in the pill's aura so that it wouldn't leak out. Ha! Qin Yu let out a long breath. His eyes were a bit tired but he actually smiled. With 3 longevity pills refined, that meant he could obtain another soul treasure. He was one step closer to the soul summoning bell recognizing him as its master. After putting away the jade bottles, Qin Yu was preparing to restore his losses when he discovered a communication jade slip floating beside him. Surprise flashed in his eyes and he lifted a hand to take it. A moment later, Qin Yu opened the doors to the training room and welcomed Kong Mingqiao in. He had an apologetic look on his face. "I'm really sorry. I have been refining pills today and made the arena steward wait for a long time." Kong Mingqiao smiled. "It's fine. I'm very free every day, so it doesn't matter where I am." He handed over the jade slip. "This is Chu Taidu's challenge jade slip." Qin Yu probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, his eyes brightened. He placed the jade slip down, a thoughtful look on his face. He seemed hesitant and thoughtful, but he couldn't help but laugh out loud in his heart. He never thought that Grand Authority Chu Taidu would be such a good person. The challenge jade slip clearly stated that Chu Taidu was willing to use 10 precious treasures as a gambling stake to challenge Qin Yu. And, these 10 treasures were all needed for the soul summoning bell to recognize him as its master. Adding in the rewards that Qin Yu obtained from refining pills, even if one of them was repeated, there were still 12. In addition to the 9 he obtained from the jade box space, there was a total of 21 treasures. He had collected over half of them. As for whether or not he would lose the gambling fight, Qin Yu smiled from the bottom of his heart. He didn't dare to say that he was number 1 under the heavens in alchemy, but beating up Chu Taidu shouldn't be a problem at all. If this wasn't a good person, then what was? If it were possible, Qin Yu really wanted to make a plaque right now and have someone send it to the Chu family's residence. Kong Mingqiao frowned. "Fellow Daoist Qin Yu, Kong Mingqiao knows that you are collecting these treasures, so he deliberately proposed this gambling stake. He must be worried that you would refuse. This isn't normal at all." Qin Yu smiled. "I thank Arena Steward Kong for the advice, but I have still decided to accept Chu Taidu's challenge." Seeing the worry in Kong Mingqiao's eyes, he continued to say, "Arena Steward, rest assured that since I agreed, I naturally have my reasons. No matter what Chu Taidu's goal is, he is destined to return in failure." Kong Mingqiao's eyes flashed. "It looks like my worries were groundless. Since fellow Daoist Qin Yu is so confident, I will have someone reply to Qi Xing. He is just a junior and doesn't have the qualifications for you to personally appear. However, I must remind you. Perhaps Chu Taidu isn't considered much, but fellow Daoist Qin Yu shouldn't overlook the possibility that there is someone behind him." Kong Mingqiao bid his farewells and left. Qin Yu felt his heart warm. No matter what the reason was, at the very least this Kong Mingqiao had looked after him. However, if Kong Mingqiao could think of something, Qin Yu naturally wouldn't overlook it. As his thoughts raced, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The killing curse had failed, so he had changed his way of thinking. "Purple Moon, I will clearly remember all of this. I will let you be happy for now, but in the future, there will be a time to settle things between you and me." There was no need to investigate at all. Qin Yu would place this debt on the immortal sect's head. Qi Xing waited from sunrise until sunset. Even though he was a shrewd person, he still couldn't help but reveal a trace of worry. This was the situation he was most worried about. If Qin Yu didn't agree, then no matter how many plans he had or how much confidence he had, he wouldn't have a chance to display them. Moreover, what terrified him the most was that the immortal sect only cared about the results and didn't care about the process. If things didn't progress smoothly, then the immortal sect would likely turn against them in the blink of an eye. Even if one thought with their thighs, they knew that Chu Taidu and he would both suffer great misfortune. It was even possible that they would lose their lives. As sweat dripped down his forehead and his thoughts became increasingly chaotic, a Dao Arena cultivator suddenly arrived in front of him and said, "Fellow Daoist Qi Qing, please inform Grand Authority Chu that his challenge has already been accepted by Lord Qin Yu. As for the specific arrangements for the challenge, please prepare them as soon as possible and send someone to inform him in advance." This feeling was like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to topple over, only to be pulled back by someone. Qi Xing felt like he had just survived a calamity. Of course, he tried his best to maintain a calm expression. "Many thanks for informing me, fellow Daoist. I will report back to teacher. Farewell." After walking out of the Daoist dojo's reception area and passing through the plaza, Qi Xing couldn't wait to fly back to the Chu residence. Chu Taidu was all smiles. "Very good. I knew that it was impossible for Qin Yu to resist the temptation of 10 treasures. He really did agree. Congratulations, teacher, the first step has been smoothly carried out. As long as Qin Yu accepts the challenge, that is the same as falling into teacher's trap. With your alchemy skills, defeating him will be easy." Qi Xing happily congratulated. Chu Taidu shook his head. "It's a bit too early to say these things. Qin Yu has continuously refined 7th grade pills in recent days and his alchemy skills are formidable. I cannot underestimate him." Qi Xing flattered, "Teacher is too modest. Decades ago, you already had the strength to refine 7th grade pills. It was only because of the rules that you didn't casually refine pills that you didn't want the price of high-level pills to fall. In these past years, your strength has risen yet again. You can even attempt to refine 8th grade pills. Defeating Qin Yu will be as easy as turning your hand." Chu Taidu smiled, not saying anything. Qin Yu had achieved success at a young age and was in high spirits. Moreover, he had heard that he came from some land of exiles, so it was no wonder he didn't know his depths. In the land of divinity and demons, the alchemists that truly stood at the peak of alchemy all silently abided by an unspoken agreement. That was to maintain the supply of high-level pills in the world and ensure that the demand for them couldn't keep up. Only like this could peak alchemists be guaranteed a sufficiently important status. The so-called drop in pill prices was nothing more than a facade. To be able to refine 7th grade pills was already extraordinary, and Qin Yu was so young. But the depth of the alchemy heritage of the land of divinity and demons far surpassed his imagination. Even if the immortal sect didn't take action, Qin Yu had already violated a taboo by recklessly refining 7th grade pills. Sooner or later he would be punished. It had to be known that if peak alchemists joined forces, even if placed in the entire land of divinity and demons, they were still an extremely powerful force. This young man was far too confident in himself. This time he would suffer a great setback. Perhaps his bright and resplendent life would come to an abrupt end because of this. The Dao Arena Master had used this phrase in the past. Although no one understood why it could express such a taunting meaning, it was actually quite fitting to describe Qin Yu's current actions. "Qin Yu, let this old man end you." Chapter 452. In a single day, news that Alchemy Grandmaster Chu Taidu would challenge the 9th-ranked Qin Yu on the ancient parishment decree spread through Four Seasons City at an astonishing speed. In the inn, after Ning Liang obtained the news, she couldn't help but reveal a worried look. But as she thought about how Qin Yu was able to cure the cold poison in her body, his alchemy skills were unfathomably deep. Even if he faced Chu Taidu, he still had a chance of winning. As her heart calmed down a little, Ning Ruffing suddenly smiled. "Little girl, once Qin Yu is defeated in his challenge, that will be your chance. You must grasp it well." Ning Liang had an anxious expression. "Grandfather, the Qin family's alchemy skills are extremely strong. How do you know he will lose to Chu Taidu?" Ning Ruffing smiled and sighed. "You are still young, but there are some things that you can't see through. Although Chu Taidu is despicable, there is no denying that he is a smart person. Would a smart person like him jump out at this time to find trouble with Qin Yu? This matter isn't simple at all. If I'm not wrong, Chu Taidu's actions are likely directed by the immortal sect." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "With the immortal sect's strength, since they chose Chu Taidu to fight, they must have made thorough preparations. Although Qin Yu is strong, he cannot win this challenge. If he couldn't win, he could only lose." Ning Liang fiercely stood up. "No, I have to remind Grand Authority Qin to refuse Chu Taidu's challenge." Ning Ruffing waved his hand. "Sit down. Qin Yu agreed to accept the challenge, so how could he go back on his word? It's already too late for you to go now. Grandpa. Grand Authority Qin has shown graciousness to us. Even if it's too late, we still have to try. We can't watch helplessly as he is schemed against by others." Ning Liang continued to walk out. Ning Ruffing sighed. "You silly girl, can't you calm down a bit? Let me finish first. Don't completely lose your sense of propriety as soon as Qin Yu is involved." His eyes turned earnest. "Qin Yu is ranked on the ancient parishment decree. His strength, temperament, and methods are all top class. Do you really think he can't see all of this?" "Wrong, it's just that you don't see it clearly. Qin Yu clearly knows that there is something strange about this matter and yet he still dared to agree. It is clear that he is confident in himself and that he can win the bet that Chu Taidu proposed. Qin Yu is young and successful. Although there are hidden worries from the immortal sect, he is still incomparably proud in his heart. If you ask him now to go back on his word and refuse the challenge, he might not necessarily be grateful to you. Rather, he might even be annoyed. Little girl, think about it carefully. Isn't grandfather right?" Ning Liang bit her lips. She couldn't help but acknowledge that Ning Ruffing's words were reasonable. "Grandfather, what should we do?" Ning Ruffing lightly said, "Wait. Wait for Qin Yu to suffer a loss, wait for him to be driven into a corner." Ling Ning's eyes widened. She had an astonished expression on her face that said, "How can you be like this? I misjudged you. Smelly girl, what kind of look is that? First of all, there is nothing we can do. Waiting is our only choice, and this is your best chance to move Qin Yu." Ning Ruffing bitterly smiled, his voice solemn. "Once Qin Yu fails, the immortal sect will surely have a series of backup plans waiting for him. At that time, you will appear at his side. In the darkest moments of his life, you will accompany him. This is to show that you are willing to bear all of this with him. When a man is at his weakest, he is more easily moved than a woman. You can leave a mark in his heart that will never be erased. Then, you can tell Qin Yu that the Ning family is willing to help him. As an official titled noble family of the demonic path, we have our own fiefdom in a small world of the demonic path. As long as he is willing, the Ning family is willing to bring him in and even recommend him to truly join the demonic path." Ning Rufing's eyes shined, revealing a strong self-confidence. In the land of divinity and demons, the 7 great empires have a vast territory, and there are also the Tao Arena, Shadow Edge, Abyss, and other such formidable influences. But the only one that can truly contend with the immortal sect is our demonic path. Qin Yu will definitely understand that if he wants to continue living and smoothly grow up, joining the demonic path is the best choice. As for the Ning family, they could borrow Qin Yu's strength to rise once more and become a true noble family of the demonic path. They could even restore themselves and surpass their glorious past. Of course, there was no need to say these words to Ning Liang. She had to maintain a pure heart so that when facing Qin Yu, she could remain calm. She only needed to act according to her heart. Soon, 3 days passed. The battle between Chu Taidu and Qin Yu would be held in Four Seasons City's Great Square. This was the core region of Four Seasons City. Many official offices were located around the square. Since the 2 participants in the competition weren't ordinary people, the venue had to match their status. Ning Rufing arrived early with a group of Ning family cultivators. Because they had spent a considerable amount of money on tickets, their seats were relatively good. In the 3rd row to the south, they could clearly see the blue stone platform in the center of the square. Of course, using the word constructed wasn't appropriate. This was because Four Seasons City's Great Square itself was the hub of the entire city's Great Array formation. It already had its own consciousness and could easily change its external form. For instance, this high platform. As long as one obtained the permission of the City Lord Mansion and was recognized by the Array Spirit, it would only take several breaths of time to automatically transform. Ning Liang furrowed her eyebrows, worry in her eyes. She was looking for Qin Yu, but there was still some time before the competition began. It was clear that he hadn't arrived yet. Today, the Great Square could be called a sea of people. Whether it was Chu Taidu or Qin Yu, both of them had attributes that were eye-catching enough. In particular, with the wild spread of rumors and all sorts of conspiracy theories, people flocked towards them like a flock of ducks. Suddenly, there was a burst of restlessness. In the distance, a long convoy of carriages glided over. They turned in an elegant and perfect arc and stopped in a corner of the great square. Countless doors opened and black-clothed cultivators stepped out. Their eyes shined with a sharp light and their auras were powerful. Qi Xing pushed open the front passenger door and quickly walked to the back seat. He respectfully opened the door and said, "Teacher, we've arrived." Chu Taidu, who had his eyes closed in meditation, slowly opened them. A sharp light flashed in his eyes, like the cold light of a swordsman in the dark. He stepped off the carriage, a warm smile on his face. He wore the white robes of a high-level alchemist, making him seem even more elegant and graceful. Grand Authority Chu's appearance was very good. Today, he had tidied himself up to make himself even more dazzling. He smiled and waved at the cultivators watching from the great square, calm and unruffled. This performance immediately drew cheers. As an alchemy grand authority that had stood in Four Seasons City for many years, Chu Taidu had countless fans and naturally had many supporters. And at this time, another convoy of carriages arrived. Its scale wasn't any smaller than Chu Taidu's, and it was even more spectacular. On the front of these flying carriages, there was an eye-catching flying goddess statue that shined with a rainbow-colored light. Even from far away, one could feel the noble aura it exuded. This was the exclusive carriage of the Tao Arena. It was rumored that the sect that created this flying goddess flying carriage had the shadow of the Tao Arena behind them. Although no one could confirm this, it was a fact that the Tao Arena had purchased them on a large scale and used them together. The flying goddess flying car's price was shockingly high. Of course, it was also extremely expensive to manufacture. Not to mention its perfect endurance and powerful protection, just the flying goddess flying car that seemed to be decorated on the front of the car was a priceless treasure. Contained within this statue was a supernatural ability that allowed a flying goddess to descend. Once it was activated, it could choose to slaughter or defend, and it could compare with the strike of an ordinary almighty being. Someone from the Dao Arena had come, and Qin Yu was currently living in the Dao Arena. The flying carriage stopped in the great square. The Dao Arena cultivators quickly stepped out and respectfully opened the door. Countless cultivators' eyes widened. In the end, they saw a black-robed youth step out from the flying carriage. Countless eyes widened and then subconsciously widened. They realized that this was Qin Yu, so this was what he looked like. Thinking about it, this was the first time that Qin Yu had revealed his true appearance in Four Seasons City. Many men bitterly smiled. "You're so fierce and yet you're still young and handsome. How are we supposed to live like this? Luckily, you might run out of luck today." This sort of heaven-defying monstrous genius was born to strike at others. It was best if the heavens took him back as soon as possible. As for the female cultivators, their eyes began to brighten. Although the Dao Arena Master had always been mysterious, there were many interesting rumors circulating about him in the land of divinity and demons. For instance, no matter how intelligent, cultivated, or temperament a woman was, in the end, a member of the Appearance Association. These words were extremely reasonable. Many female cultivators had been supporting Grand Authority Chu without any hesitation just a moment ago, but now they began to hesitate. Qin Yu looked handsome, cool, and awesome. He should also be fierce, right? But today, Grand Authority Chu had come with ill intentions. If Qin Yu were to lose, he feared he would suffer a great deal of misfortune. Many pairs of beautiful eyes revealed traces of worry. Many great figures of Four Seasons City who had brought their women here to broaden their horizons bitterly smiled inwardly. They hurriedly turned around and warned Qin Yu in a low voice. Some of them spoke in a gentle tone, some of them gave explanations, and some of them spoke in a direct manner. But the meaning behind all of their words was the same. Qin Yu can only watch from afar and cannot approach at all, otherwise I will break your legs. Ning Liang's eyes brightened. It had been a long time since she had seen Qin Yu. Her heart began to race uncontrollably. Her eyes swept over the starry-eyed women around her and she couldn't help but cough. "What are you looking at? If you keep looking, I'll stab you in the eye." This thought gave her a fright, and a blush appeared on her face. Was she jealous? However, she quickly suppressed the worry in her heart. She looked at Qin Yu standing in front of everyone. Although she knew that if things developed as her grandfather said, that would be the best result for her, she still didn't want to see Qin Yu fail. He was such an outstanding and proud person. He should continue to shine brightly, so how could he suffer the shadow of defeat? "Qin Yu, you can do it. You can definitely win." Standing beside the speed car, Qin Yu seemed to sense something. He looked up and his eyes met with Ning Liang's. He smiled and waved his hand in greeting. "Ah!" Qin Yu waved at me. His smile is so handsome. He's about to fall. Screams pierced the eardrums. Ning Liang smiled and nodded at Qin Yu. Her eyes swept over the excited women around her, and a trace of pride rose in her heart. "What are you all so excited about? Right now, the only one in his eyes is me. Grand Authority Qin, I am overjoyed that you were able to accept my challenge. When one reaches our boundary in alchemy, it is extremely difficult to take another step forward. We should compare notes with each other more often. Only then will we have the slightest chance of moving forwards." Chu Taiduke said with a sincere expression, his eyes bright with joy. If one didn't know the truth, they might have believed his words. A best actor level character really wasn't just for show. Qin Yu smiled. I also think that Grand Authority Chu is a good person. As he spoke, he made an inviting gesture and walked towards the center of the square's blue stone platform, leaving Chu Taidu standing behind in a daze. How come he had been labeled as a good person for no reason at all? Even if Qin Yu didn't turn hostile, he should still be cold and indifferent. Was he so stupid that he didn't realize this, or was he just completely confident in himself? If he was ranked on the ancient perishment decree, then he should have been smart enough. So, it could only be the latter. Chu Taidu smiled. This was truly a high-spirited young man. His spirit was so sharp that it left one envious. But soon, he would learn that reality was always crueler than what he imagined. He traced the ring on his finger and felt a cool sensation pass through him. Chu Taidu's smile became much calmer. If he had an 80% chance of winning this competition before, then now he was absolutely confident. The Immortal Sect was truly worthy of being the most powerful influence in the land of divinity and demons with the deepest background. They actually possessed such a supreme alchemy treasure. With its help, Qin Yu had no chance of winning. And as long as he won, the Immortal Sect promised that they would hand over this supreme alchemy treasure to him for 100 years. Although it wasn't a direct gift, Chu Taidu was already satisfied. To be able to hold on to such a treasure for 100 years was already a great stroke of good fortune. Without accident, his alchemy strength would undergo a qualitative rise within 100 years. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.